All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. And I'm your host, Ben, and this is a week 15 and 16 EPL review show. Because what happened in the midweek and my leading off story will be basically a recap of what happened in the midweek. Starting off with Arsenal. Arsenal had a much more interesting game versus London Town than I guess I was expecting. Maybe a lot of people were expecting. And they escaped thanks to a very late winner by Declan Rice, who is continuing his little run of scoring late goals for them. It helped him with Man United. Arsenal, just as a team, have been getting some late goals this season. Got one versus Man City, Chelsea, and then Brentford, and now you can add Luton to this. And 6 minutes of stoppage time, and I think this happened in like the sixth minute. But there are other big storylines in the game too. I mean, Martinelli, started to get going again. He's taken a while to score because I think he had like 15 last season. Havertz probably had his best game for Arsenal, just all around game. Scored another goal as well, and then Jesus had a nice little header in that game as well. And I don't know. I've been there's been a lot of talk about Granit Xhaka missing and what that has done to the team. I do think that's affected maybe Martinelli and how Xhaka was making some runs. Maybe that kind of explains it a little bit too. Just Arsenal's front three just haven't really been able to get a lot of game time either because of Jesus' injuries. So maybe that's been kind of affecting it as well. So. But that was just kind of getting started. Really, probably the main storyline was what happened with Man City and Aston Villa. So Man City did go to away to Aston Villa without Rodri, and once again, they not only lost, they kind of got embarrassed. I think the shots were like 2-20, and it was really just another instance of just like we saw for Spurs. Of a keeper like Emi Martinez just not giving City the ball back. I think Emi Martinez had 90% pass accuracy in this game. But another thing too was Leon Bailey. Leon Bailey was kind of the hero. He's been in and out of the squad, but he started to really show up for them in the last couple of weeks. He also played a role in the goal versus Arsenal. That when we get to their game, and really just the way he was just taking on players. He was superb the entire game. And then finally, when Villa needed a little magic, a little maybe break to go their way because this does take a deflection. Leon Bailey supplied it. So awesome to see. And just everyone in that team was special that day. Tielemans was probably as good as he's been in an Aston Villa shirt. Douglas Luiz and Kamara just kind of bossed again Man City without having Rodri. And then from there we move on to Liverpool, and Liverpool dodged the disaster that was waiting for them. At Bramall Lane, there was a little squad rotation. Gomez was tried at left back, and we saw this versus Luton. That hasn't really worked out when it's been tried. I understand getting Simicus a break, but it nearly proved costly because he did have a big mistake that led to a pretty decent chance for Sheffield to nearly score. Uh, and they did have a few counter moments, but uh, for the most part, and they never Liverpool never really seemed comfortable in the game, but they were able to get the first goal from a corner kick. I think it was Virgil van Dijk that scored the first one, and then kind of Darwin Núñez in pure kind of chaos fashion. He had a couple chances to miss, but in the end, he actually does provide the ball that led to the second goal with Slabashai able to bang in the second. So. It was quite a chaotic night, but that's one of those where in the midweek on a short week's rest, just get the points and then worry about the performance later, and that's what they did. But a team a team that didn't do that, a team that not just got the points but were really flying and enjoyed their football was Fulham. Fulham absolutely hammered Nottingham Forest, and Steve Cooper might be the next manager to go. Apparently, his job was maybe on the line versus Wolves, and they didn't lose that game, but they weren't really inspiring that game either. But Fulham are really starting to click under Silva. You were wondering if maybe there was going to be a little bit of a hangover from what losing that game in the fashion they did versus Liverpool, because they did have that 3-2 lead going into I think like the 83rd minute or so. And no, it is only just it inspired them to even more. And interesting thing in this was they got Tosin Adebayo back, a really talented defender for them last season. They've been without him the entire part of this season because I think he had surgery. And he's going to make their defense significantly better. It also no team Ream, I guess, the last two games, so it's allowed Calvin Bassey to play on his preferred side, and that back line looks much better. But really, it's Jimenez. Jimenez is finally starting to bang in some goals for them. I think he has 4 for his last 5 games, and that changes their attack too. And they've got some creation now. They've moved Arobi a little further wide. They brought Tom Carney into the side a little bit more, and the way that they're moving the ball with Willian Pereira is involved as well. They're starting to be a really fun side, and that's not just showing just in general of how they're moving the ball. I think they have something like 13 goals for the last 3 games. So well done, Marco Silva, and it seems maybe this can continue. We'll have to see. And then Man United beat Chelsea 2-1 in thanks to a McTominay brace, and in a very wild game because going into this, you were wondering, well, maybe because Chelsea had to finish that game versus Brighton down a man. They were without Conor Gallagher because of that red card. Maybe this would have been a good week to get Chelsea. And Man United had, I think, over 4 XG. I mean, it could have been a lot more. They had 28 shots and 12 on target. Uh, Horland, Garnacho, and Antony was front three. Rashford and Martial were benched, which I thought was interesting. So Man United looked best when I guess Rashford was benched. So on the weekend, Rashford was benched, and that didn't necessarily happen. So I do think Chelsea definitely missed Conor Gallagher, but it was just a weird game where just Caicedo struggled. Reece James really struggled after he came on in the second half, and Enzo struggled, and just you're wondering because Chelsea had finally gotten through that gauntlet, mostly of the Spurs, Man City, and Brighton and Newcastle, and you're wondering, well, Man United have maybe be vulnerable themselves, and no, the absolute opposite happened. So it's one of those things where. It's 2 steps, 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. I guess you could maybe say for Chelsea, you still don't really know what you're going to get out of them, and I guess you can say the same thing for Man United because of what they did versus Bournemouth on the weekend. And then speaking of Bournemouth, Bournemouth got another win over Crystal Palace, pretty an SA-less Crystal Palace, which is showing up. Areola continues his winning ways, and man, did he have fun on Saturday versus at Old Trafford. Brighton beat Brentford 2-1. A bit of a different formation that Thomas Frank tried. It seems they lost Brian and Bremo in the game as well. I think he got the first goal with a PK, and then in the second half he kind of twisted his ankle a little bit. So there could be worries about how long they're going to be without him. They're probably going to be without him for African Cup of Nations too. So this is a kind of a nervy time a little bit for Brentford because he's kind of been their main creative, attacking guy. He links up play really well. He's an outlet when you go long. He can get past people. He's underrated in many respects, and so missing him isn't going to be uh, it is going to be felt. I guess I should say that. And then Wolves do go on to beat Vincent Company's Burnley, so they weren't able to carry on that 5-0 win versus Sheffield into some momentum. But Burnley did do well versus Brighton, even though they got thumped a little bit in the second half to get a point. So not the end of the world for Burnley. They did lose Koulibaly in this game though. That could affect them a little bit. Though his replacement Odegaard was quite good on the weekend. And then Thursday, we got what I called a day of Brexit, 4-4-2, a celebration. So, I mean, Everton defeated a very depleted Newcastle team. I think I even mentioned last podcast, I was expecting Howe to do a lot of rotation to maybe kind of eat the points on this game. That way you could have somewhat of a fresh squad going into Spurs, probably the more important game given how close they are in the table and how you figure Spurs or a team you're fighting against for a Champions League spot. But no, no changes were made, and I think it showed up in the second half because Trippier made 2 errors that I just think he doesn't normally do. Now you can argue that Trippier is maybe a little overrated for his defensive ability wise. But he doesn't make errors like this, and this wasn't really just a defensive error. This is just him being sloppy on the ball. No, I just think his mind was trying to do something his legs weren't letting him do. Uh, and Everton were able to get 2 quick goals onto a Trippier errors, and then I think Beto got a third. So they got hammered a little bit. And then we get to what happened with Tottenham and West Ham. And so how would Tottenham respond to their draw versus Man City? And they started off well. They get the early goal with Christian Romero being back, and he scores an open goal with a nice header from a corner kick. It seemed like maybe the game was going to be a breeze, but then the second goal never came. And West Ham were able to exploit a little bit of that high defensive line that they like playing. and they nabbed 2 off the counter. First being Jared Bowen, and he just kinda happens to be in the right place at the right time when a deflection falls into his path. And then James Ward-Prowse, after Destiny Udogie has kind of a bad pass to keeper, Vicario. A lot of, argument was online whether, it's Vicario's fault or Udogie's, but either way, uh it is kind of a risky back pass, but that is how Spurs play. But yeah, Ward-Prowse was able to run onto it. He challenges the keeper, wins the 50-50 duel, and then after striking the post the first time, the rebound just falls kindly to him. But there was still a lot of time for Tottenham to still score and do something, and they just weren't. They just didn't have teeth in their attack. It was very similar, in my opinion, to what we saw versus. What Man City were actually doing to Spurs, to be honest, just so it was like the flip side of what happened just a couple of days ago, where all this play, they get the ball, the entire ball was living in the West Ham penalty area, but that's where just everything stopped. Everyone was very timid. They would get, Kulishevsky would get the ball in the wing, and it was just recycle ball. No one was really, doing, showing any teeth, essentially. So I was wondering, maybe this would be a game to bring Richarlison back. I know, he's maybe on a minutes restriction. Maybe he's not fully healthy. And he did finally come on, and he did miss a fairly big chance to actually, make it 2-1 in their favors. This miss happened, I think, before even the second goal that West Ham scored. Uh, but that was pretty much it. I mean, it was one of those. It was watching that. It was maybe the first time where I really saw where Madison's miss was showing up, because I feel like too many players were too hesitant, too scared to do anything. Lo Celso, for example, he didn't show what he showed versus Man City. West Ham were doing a very good job to keep things congested, keep things packed, but. It required something a little bit more inventive, and they just kind of missed it. Also, I think you saw what they were missing with Sar. And Sarr was back on the weekend, and you saw what he was able to do versus Newcastle. Because I think maybe one of those counter goals maybe wouldn't have happened with someone like Sarr being back, being able to recover. So that sets us up for what happened on the weekend. And I will get started with Tottenham and Newcastle. Tottenham do want to win 4-1 with a first goal from Udogie. So I said maybe you could maybe blame him uh, for the first goal in the game winning goal that West Ham scored a couple days ago. So it was nice that he actually is the first one that gets the opener here. And he had a fantastic game as well. And then Richarlison gets two. So Richarlison got the start and repaid it with 2 goals of his own, and then Son PK, and then Joe Linton got one very very late after. Spurs were a little sloppy, after a lot of rotation. So a couple bench players maybe made a poor pass, and Callum Wilson, another sub from the second half, came on and squared it to Joe Linton for the goal. Uh, I mean, with Newcastle, it was another. I think it was a story really for both teams where you can. It's more of a reason to praise Spurs, praise a little bit what Pochettino did. He changed things up a little bit, but also you can't look at this game without looking at Newcastle and kind of questioning a little bit at Eddie Howe's man management. I don't necessarily want to go at him because I've mentioned it before. You want to always kind of look for reasons to doubt him, and for some reason he's been able to. I shouldn't say for some reason, but every time he's been able to actually show up and prove those doubters wrong. And here, it's just one of those cases where I don't think he's managed the minutes well. Everyone knows he has a squad that just has been unchanged, and the way that they work without the ball, the amount of running and aggression that he asks his teams, the amount of grass he asks his players to cover is it's not insignificant, and it's they haven't changed their style of play, and I just think they're running on fumes, and they didn't look themselves versus Everton, and I think that kind of showed up a little bit here. They did have a chance to maybe get a goal lead and maybe sit back, and because they weren't able to actually get that, once Spurs got the first goal or even the second one at 2-0, you did feel it was kind of over. They gave it a little bit of a go in the second half, but again, I don't really know if that was wise either. Now, one thing you can say is in this game, they did have Longstaff back on the bench. They did have Callum Wilson at least back on the bench. So I feel like they could have maybe used that rotation even more than they did. So another thing you can say is it's Newcastle without Pope is going to be different. I don't necessarily want to go at Nebraska for these goals because I don't really know how many of them were his fault. But it's just Pope was just you could count on him to save you a goal almost in any single game, essentially. And missing him for the next, it's possible the rest of the season. I think they said 5 months. It's not going to be insignificant either. So Newcastle are just really victim of maybe their own success, and it's because they've had so many games. Champions League has taken a lot out of them as well, and they've got a big Champions League game today versus AC Milan, and it's a part of the story. It really is. The injuries and the squad depth is a giant part of the story, and it was just a little bit surprising that we didn't see how try to change things up just a little bit, just to give to put some kind of fresh legs on there, and he didn't. So that kind of sets us up a little bit with Spurs. I mentioned how they kind of changed things up as well. Which Richarlison got the start, and Son was moved to the left wing, and it was very interesting to hear Pochettino. Uh, uh, After the game, he said that he looked back and he said all of our best creation or all of our best chances in the last couple of games have come to our wide players. And so it had been Brian Heel in this kind of spot. And he was like, "Oh, I kind of want Sonny to be there." And he didn't necessarily score, well, other than the PK, but he set up two of these goals, just truly by himself, and the elite kind of a wing play that he does, which I'll really harp on. And then Brennan Johnson had a chance to really tack onto this too. He hit the post a couple of times. He had a really good square ball, and you see what he has to offer, and he had a pretty good game as well. And Kulishevsky just seemed to be a little bit more, I guess, comfortable, to be honest, playing through the middle. And also, it was not insignificant that Richarlison was just kind of a body, just kind of a presence in the starting striker spot. And you saw that for a couple of the goals as well. And so I don't necessarily want to get over all the chances. I mean, the first 10 minutes or so, the best chances did come to Newcastle. There's a Bruno shot where basically after Trippier kind of finds Bruno switches it long to Gordon, who passed it to who has passed Pedro Porro at this point, and then Gordon kind of just plays a nice through ball to Joe Linton, and he cuts the ball back in the box, and Bruno is kind of open top of the box, and it's a good effort. I mean, it's a long speculative effort, but if this is on goal, it possibly is going in. But really, like the big chance was when Gordon kind of tried to square a pass to Ishak, and Ben Davies did really well to defend this. So this was a real chance, and Newcastle go long with Nebraska, and he picks out Joe Linton, and again, Spurs aren't necessarily marking him properly. Joe Linton quickly flicks a ball ahead up over to Anthony Gordon, who again is unmarked down the wing himself, and Gordon has a free run down the wing, and he gets into the box. He sees Ishak open for a square ball, and this looks like not only a for sure tap in, even if Ben Davies sticks a leg out, to stop this, because of the direction Ben Davies is facing, you figure 99% of the time, or 99.9% of the time, even if Ben Davies stops this, he kicks it into his own net. So it was just it defied like kind of the physics a little bit for Ben Davies to be able to just to slide this right, deflect the ball off actually Ishak and not into his own net. Uh, so it was a fantastic recovery by Ben Davies, but also a little luck involved. Sometimes you need that. But after that, all the chances did go to Tottenham's way. There was a Romero header that was cleared off the line. It was just a kind of a corner kick. We saw Romero in the air versus West Ham, and this is going in. Alvarez is just standing in the right spot at the right time. Finally, we see someone defending the back post on corner kicks. And then Son had a dangerous cross, nearly found Richarlison, and then we actually see Son find Udogi. And Tottenham maybe started off a little slower, but after about 20 minutes, they really started to take hold of the game. And I feel like this is a perfect way to sum up how Tottenham play. So it starts with Christian Romero having a very good pass upfield, finds Kulishevsky, who quickly one times this to Pedro Porro, having the ball in the middle third of the field. Porro is playing like Madison here. He's like a number 10, not really a fullback. Porro then picks out a great pass to Destiny Udogie, who is essentially playing as a number 10 at himself here. Udogie gets it, and turns around Almiron, but he doesn't really, fancy himself to go any further. So he finds Son on the wing, and then Son basically sizes up Trippier 1v1. He does a step over to create a little separation, and then takes a touch towards to go to the byline. Uh, Before he threads in a hard square pass to the 6-yard area. And Trippier is beaten. Trippier, again, maybe this would happen just anytime, but I do feel like Trippier is just running on fumes. So that probably factored in a little bit as well. And then, not only is Trippier beaten, Udogi is just there. He's sitting there between Lascelles and Shar, and he continues his run. It kind of goes unmarked, and then Son is able to find him for almost a tap-in finish. And again, this is their left back basically being like their number 9. I do think you could go with Bruno from Grimares a little bit because it's probably his man, but he's worried about Kulishevsky, and Richarlison is also dragging attention too. So that's the reason why playing someone like Richarlison, he leads to goals just in general because he creates attention for others. It's just his presence alone, helps create this. But another thing too is this goal comes from Son taking on Trippier and beating him and getting to the byline, and then setting a dangerous cross in the 6 yard area. And it's just none of this inverted nonsense. As I say, it's just genuine good wing play. To get to the byline. But another thing too is Son is two-footed. He can go either way, which makes him honestly very underrated. It feels like there's not enough players out there that can do that. It also requires like genuine pace and athleticism to be able to do it. That's usually the reason why you see players play on the opposite side of the field. Because you don't necessarily need to be as quick, to run towards goal as opposed to being able to beat someone, going past them. And then there was another chance that nearly created a similar goal, just on the other side of the field. So again, Christian Romero does well with a good forward ball in the middle of the field. He finds the teammate's feet. Pedro Porro again does well to do a little flick here. It gets the ball past the defender to get it to Kulishevsky. And then Kulishevsky finds Brendan Johnson, and Johnson nearly sends the ball into Sarr. And if Sarr gets better contact, this is 2-0. And again, Richarlison doesn't score, but he creates the chance because Fabian Schär of Newcastle is just running to Richarlison. He's worried about Richarlison, and that leaves Sarr wide open. Uh, but it doesn't matter because Spurs get the second goal just quickly after that. And again, so Richarlison is helping them out without contributing to goals. And finally, he helps with that too. And I think it's fitting he gets the final touch because he starts to move in the first place. So it looks like Spurs have played a really risky pass, both to Porro and Udogi, completely out of possession to stop a Newcastle transition attack. But Basuma does well to stop it. So first, but Newcastle still keep possession, and then Richarlison goes hard for a tackle, and so he's the one that gets Spurs the ball back. Porro then gets the ball and it sends a long one trying to find Son. Trippier first heads it away, but Son is still able to get to the ball. And then on the byline, Son basically fools Trippier again with another step over, and then quick feet to get past him. And then it's another square ball situation. And this time he picks Richarlison out, and Richarlison has a nice first time finish to get into the net. And Richarlison is initially covered, but after Son gets past Trippier, Lascelles has left him to go after Son. And being able to get past him on 1v1 the box, just open up space for everyone else because it forces a defense that's settled to have to reshuffle, and they have to wonder, well, who do I mark now in a 2v1 situation? And there's often a debate on how you beat a well set in defense. I guess you can call it a low block. I think the easiest answer is to just have your winger being able to beat someone or a fullback 1v1. Easier said than done. But just by doing able to do that, you create an overload instantly, giving the attacking team a numbers advantage in the penalty area. And then I mentioned how Son being 2 footed just kind of creates a lot of this as well. If you're a defender, you don't know which way he's going to be able to go, as opposed to because Trippier thinks he's got him, and Son's still able to because he's basically on the sideline, and Son still fools him. Uh, and then Brendan Johnson had a nice strike. So 2-0 felt like the game was dead. This could have maybe killed it off. Newcastle playing like a little bit deeper at this point, and they're losing possession more and more. And then Joe Linton gets the ball taken off him by Sarr, and it quickly leads to a shot. Spurs seem to be able to handle, I think, the duels a little bit more with Sarr and Basuma back. And then there's another chance breakaway here by Son, and it's a near Richarlison goal again. Udogi intercepts a pass, and immediately Spurs break a field. Son gets into the box and plays it to Kulishevsky, who floats a ball into the box, and it just misses Richarlison's head. And then we get to we get to halftime, and I did think the tweak by Pochettino, moving Kulishevsky, moving Son, having Richarlison back, was helping, but it also felt like this was like the absolute worst opponent for Newcastle to face. Because Spurs were playing such an open game, and it just seemed like the way that they schemed their fullbacks all over the field, it is just impossible to cover everyone and to get them to turn the ball over, unless you get them unless they turn the ball over themselves, because it is a lot of running without the ball. if Spurs pass it well, and they were. They Spurs were not turning the ball over themselves, and so Newcastle didn't have the chances to really break outside of that first 10 minutes or so when there were a couple chances when Anthony Gordon was able to get behind Pedro Porro, but they weren't able to make it count. And Newcastle were already on the running on E in the tank, and that showed as well. And fullback, both center backs were struggling as well. They mentioned Fabian Schär was struggling to run it, and it's looked like Joe Linton. I'm not Joe Linton, but Jamal Lascelles was struggling as well. But they did start off okay in the second half. Similar to how they started the game, they did come out at least giving things a go. So there's a chance here with Gordon. It's a dangerous cross sent in by Trippier, and Gordon back post. He nearly gets on the end of it. It's a hard chance, but if he actually does get better contact, it's possibly going to trouble Vicario. But he gets it wrong, and chance goes begging. And then Richarlison gets the third, and 2-0 is never a safe scoreline until you really do get third, unless you're in the 90th minute, I guess. But 3-0 really does usually kill a game off, and it comes at a good time because Newcastle were a little bit better in the second half. But what a ball this is from Pedro Porro! It's Kevin De Bruyne like to I hate like always using him, but I feel like that's the best player to kind of use this. Another thing too is just like the other two goals. This move starts with Christian Romero being on the ball. So getting him back, you obviously not just what he offered defensively, he's a good passer on the ball, and Spurs just pass away upfield to create these goals. Romero finds Basuma, and then Basuma quickly finds Pedro Porro, and then Porro sends a ball. I think ball of the weekend, essentially. He's kind of near the sideline, and he floats an angled ball, maybe 30 yards, and he's just picks Richarlison, out of in the box essentially, and then from where Richarlison brings it down with a good touch, and then after the keeper comes out, he's able to poke it between his legs. And it is good. It is good for Richarlison. He had that miss versus West Ham, and it's good for him to bounce back. So Pochettino had some faith in him, and he Richarlison rewarded that faith. And he hasn't had the best time since his Everton move, and he's spoken about that. But before he had that injury, because he had been out for the injury, he had that big goal to help them beat Sheffield, in kind of a last minute kind of fashion. And since then, it seems like Pochettino has come in and really embraced him into the team. Maybe he didn't feel like he was being loved or whatnot. It was also very awkward. It had to be awkward for him to join a team that had Harry Kane, where he just knew he's not going to play over Harry Kane. So if he can't find a way to play over Son or Kulishevsky, which probably isn't going to happen either, he was never really gonna have a lot of playing time. So I think that maybe factored in a little bit. He finally got his big move, and it just wasn't really going well, and maybe that kind of affected his mental health. He's spoken about that. He's spoken that he had some mental health struggles, but he's come in, and Spurs didn't go out and just buy a striker. They've actually showed some little faith. They brought in Brendan Johnson, but Brendan Johnson can play out wide as an option. And maybe that's kind of helped things as well too. Now it has taken a while for him to get going. He hasn't always been the biggest goal scorer threat, but he's come out and he's started to help them out. And I don't necessarily know how long this can stay this long can be a thing essentially. But when you think back, because the World Cup happened a year ago, Richarlison was a different striker for Brazil in the World Cup than he had shown. Being with Spurs, he did show he has elite talent. So I don't know. I don't know if Spurs are going to risk it with him the rest of the season or not. But at least for now, as long as he can stay healthy, because the reason why he had been out had been the injury issues. Maybe he can help them out a little bit, and it's just something to said about a manager showing faith in you. It just seems we see that over and over again. Just sometimes it just takes a player in a rut to just kind of move to a different team or to get a new manager, and all of a sudden they're a different player. Maybe we're seeing that a little bit with Richarlison. And then from there, there was another chance for Brendan Johnson had the post. I guess I'll talk about this because this is a pretty good chance. So Richarlison again goes to ground and helps Spurs win the ball back. So he's not just pitching in with goals; he's helping. He's doing really good work without the ball. And then there, Spurs quickly break in numbers again. Kulishevsky plays at the SAR. SAR quickly backheels it to Kulishevsky, and then Kulishevsky has many options, but opts to play a clever through ball to Brennan Johnson, who's tries just a really audacious chip, and he's denied by the woodwork from being unkind. This would have been quite a good goal themselves, and it's not gonna show up numbers wise, but Brennan Johnson again had another good game for them. He does a lot of really positive things for them, and they did pay a lot of money for him. And I know from Nottingham Forest, I know a lot of Spurs fans didn't necessarily like that because they saw that they were losing Harry Kane, and they looked and they're like, "Oh, whoever we replaced him with, we've lost 30 goals essentially, and all his assists. We're going to be dead." And he's come in and it hasn't necessarily led to goals yet, but he's helping. He's helping out the team a little bit. Uh, and you have to remember, yeah, they're doing this without Madison. It's still without Mickey Van de Ven. I think they get him in January, so Spurs are still keeping this train going. But then all of this was excellent, and then Christian Romero decided to have a really bad foul and could have gotten himself sent off again. And then I guess I'll speak a little bit, not necessarily on the PK, but Udogi again kind of gets on the ball, turns and finds Pedro Porro again, operating almost like a central midfielder. The reason why they haven't really missed Madison a ton, and I feel like they did miss him versus West Ham, is people like Porro and Udogi have basically been their number tens at like creating, finding that. Link in the I guess first phase build up to getting the ball in the final third, finding attackers' feet. It's a really good through ball by Pedro Porro here. It sends Son in. He's in on goal. Son maybe actually messes up. He maybe has a heavy touch, but he's still able to get that second one to get that flick to go past the keeper. It's brought down. It's obvious PK. And then from there, 4-1, 4-0, and then Newcastle do get the final one with Joe Linton. Uh, and again, I do feel like it was a case of just like the worst team for Newcastle to face. It was also interesting. It was Trippier versus former team that he played in the Champions League final for. And Trippier, maybe was at fault a little bit for two of those goals. But I do think this was more about Spurs. Newcastle have their injury issues, but Spurs had a number of guys missing too. This game, they got Sarr back, they got Richarlison back, and I think it showed. And it was a good bounce back from the West Ham game. 23 shots, 12 on target, 7 big chances for Tottenham. Ange Ball is back. 3 big chances though for Newcastle. They did have a couple chances, especially in the second half. 7 saves for Dubravka. Uh, and possession's probably what you would expect. To stick with Tottenham, I do think Richarlison is maybe the key, and Son and Brendan Johnson out wide, but just Richarlison drawing the center back attention. It allows others to make runs a little bit unmarked, like we saw with the Doogie. Um, and it just felt like they were just missing some kind of presence in the box, just because eventually everyone likes to talk about all these like great tactics and pressing and whatnot. In the end, you're gonna get into situations where you need to send a ball into a box. I mean, straight up, and you need someone that's good in the air, someone that has some size, to attack those balls and to be a threat. And so that's what they get with this guy. And then poor Udogie again just continued to kind of make the engine work as well. And then yeah, I just think they didn't necessarily look themselves versus West Ham, and that can just kind of be it. I mean, it was a risky pass that Udogie played to West Ham, but in that game they just kind of struggled. They just seemed it just seemed everything was very hesitant for some reason, like they were almost like scared. It wasn't really like them. And so they they play risky, so I don't think Pochettino was mad. Not Pochettino was mad at Udogie, for the bad back pass. I think he was a little bit more upset at how just they would get the ball into the final third and then just play could just kind of died. He likes players taking the game forward. And then with Newcastle, again, I do think you can just go and look at the roster situation and how many guys were available. I do think though, this is maybe where we actually are seeing that Tonali suspension really show up because he would have been an option you expect. He was actually one of these, basically the sole reason I think I cited for why I was high on Newcastle to start the season, to not only push maybe a Champions League run, but maybe even a Premier League run. And obviously they missed him after like I guess the first week. But I do think you can maybe go a little bit at Eddie Howe. You had Sean Longstaff and Calvin Wilson. You didn't have to start Ishak. Uh, Fabian Schär and Lascelles were struggling. They don't really have anyone for that. But I do think in this, and maybe versus Everton, maybe not this game, you could have saved Trippier's legs. You could have tried Livramento at right back, Lewis Hall left back, like we saw versus Man United in that cup game a couple weeks ago. You could have tried Longstaff over Miley or Joe Linton, maybe in the Everton game, or this you could have tried Matt Ritchie over Almiron. I mean, it's not ideal, and you're probably going to lose the game anyways. But I just think there was a chance to save some legs, and it doesn't get easier. I mean, they have a must-win game essentially versus AC Milan, and Pope made 8 saves in that first meeting. Now, AC Milan, I think, have injuries themselves. I don't know if they have Rafael Leao now, and they have I think they have Ruben Loftus-Cheek that's out. They have a number of they have a bit of an injury crisis themselves. And the game is in Newcastle, but how much can you ride those fans to get legs to work when they're just depleted? There's just not a lot of recovery time there, and that is just kind of where we are. And it is unfortunate because they were flying a little bit. You saw what they did versus Chelsea. You saw how they looked at least for that first half versus Man United, and it's just the body can only take essentially so much of this, and not being able to do any kind of rotation. I think the only sub they used versus Man United was Pope because of the injury. And you looked at the bench, and in that game, it really was just a number of just U23 academy players. So I mean, they've got so many guys out for injury, and it is just kind of that's just kind of the state of the game a little bit. They're not alone. A lot of teams are kind of dealing with this. Someone like Brentford is being like, "Hey, what about us?" Newcastle will have these, Saudi owners, no, and they're in the Champions League. They signed up for this. What about us? And that's true. Brighton as well, having that a bit of that issue as well. And one team that maybe is kind of gotten away a little bit with that is Aston Villa. And so I'll move on to the second game of the weekend in Aston Villa and Arsenal. And Aston Villa have had one hell of a week for their fans. Probably as memorable as a 6-day stretch as they can maybe I would believe. Essentially because you go on and you didn't just beat Man City, you outplayed them. From the first missile, for the first whistle, and then here they didn't necessarily outplay Arsenal, or the Arsenal were a little bit victims of their own doing in this one, but a win's a win. 6 points with Arsenal and Man City, and 4 or 5 days is immense. And there's been a lot of talk, or Aston Villa a title contending team. Well, if you're going to beat Man City and Arsenal back to back, I, the the only response you can say is yes. Now, do I believe that? If they had every game at Aston Villa Park, I would, because they haven't lost at that stadium in like a year. But they have shown to be a little bit different on the road. Another thing too is a lot of their play features on all of these unselfish runs that Ollie Watkins makes. I don't know if he can do this the entire length of the season without sustaining, some kind of knock. So do they have enough depth to maybe be able to rotate his legs to save him? Do they have enough depth to do a lot of squad rotation just in general, because they are still in Conference League, and how long are they going to take that seriously? We'll have to see. But that there's no reason to downplay what's happening here. Another kind of cool part of this story is Emi Martinez is getting a little bit of a redemption story, as is I mean, Unai Emery is getting a bit of a redemption story, as is Emi Martinez. Both were at Arsenal. Emi Martinez, maybe Arsenal fans are kind of rejecting, or Arsenal fans are, I don't know, what would be the word for it? Uh, uh, they would take back selling Emi Martinez, I guess I could say. But with Unai Emery, it was kind of just speaking with my brother, speaking with a buddy of mine that has been an Arsenal fan for a long time. Is there's a little bit more consensus there that that fit just didn't work. I think he came in to be Arsene Wenger's replacement. He wasn't Arsene Wenger. Yeah, he was the first manager to get Arsenal out of the Champions League, but he finished fifth. I think he got them to a Europa final. They got thumped in the final, but his time in or at Arsenal wasn't as bad as, I guess, people, I guess, maybe perceived it. At least going back and reading, I don't actually truly remember it myself. Uh, but I think someone said that uh, a lot of Emery's time at Arsenal was the people struggled because he didn't necessarily speak English, so they had to have someone like Freddie Newberg apparently was like the assistant guy in charge, and that's who the players kind of went with, and that's where the communication went. So there was maybe some of that. But anyways, this has been a really cool story to see. It's also it's funny too because Tielemans and Douglas Luiz have been linked to Arsenal for years, and here those 2 players showed up and helped beat Arsenal as well. And so Arsenal nearly dropped points versus Luton. They weren't necessarily great versus Luton. They did go because they conceded 3 goals, and Raya had a little bit of an error in a couple of those goals. But they won because of Declan Rice heroics. So they went in, being first in the table. You're wondering if they were going to be able to carry that momentum in, and then how would Aston Villa rebound with that Man City victory, and basically because that I think that City victory put them above City in the table at one point. Uh, and we saw a little of that as well. So Arsenal, their lineup wasn't a ton of changes. Uh, Odegaard, Rice, and Havertz for the midfield three, Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli. And then with Aston Villa, it was Konsa, Diego Carlos, and then Paul Torres, and then Digna, and it was almost like kind of it was a back four that turned into really a back three because Digna was kind of just doing his own little thing. Uh, Diego Carlos being back has been kind of a difference maker a little bit for them as well, and we've seen Konza turn to be almost like a right back or kind of a right center back. We've seen Cash kind of get shown the door, at least for these more defensive kind of contests. It was risky because Konza I didn't think necessarily had a good game versus Martinelli. Digna didn't do well versus Saka either. But having Diego Carlos back has been a bit of a game changer for Aston Villa as well. I remember Emi Martinez or Unai Emery tried something like this versus Liverpool when the game was at Anfield, and eh, Liverpool really struggling in that game. And then Diego Carlos had to go off after about 20 minutes, and that changed a lot how Aston Villa were trying to set up. So that his him coming back into the squad isn't insignificant, and he had a goal line clearance in this game. And then Kamara and Luiz, you got Kamara back. They missed him versus Bournemouth, and then Liam Bailey, Tielemans, and McGinn, and then Watkins. And I mean, the first chance though did come to Arsenal, and it came to Saka, and pretty much a good way to sum up the game. To be honest, there's a wayward pass that allows Saka to intercept the ball first, and then kind of a switch over to Martinelli, and then he floats the ball to the back post to Saka, making a great disguised run, only for Saka to get this all wrong, and he misses us out of bounds. Arsenal just seemed a little bit off when it came to pulling the trigger and finishing, and Aston Villa got away with some poor marking a little bit at the back all game, and Digna was guilty here. But it doesn't matter because Aston Villa get the first goal with John McGinn, and whereas Villa did make their touches into the box count, and it's a wonderfully worked goal. So Villa, basically play through Arsenal pressing them, and it's a great first pick out by Paul Torres, who looks like he's maybe Arsenal have him covered a little bit, and he's able to pick out a Douglas Luiz with a great kind of a mid range pass to escape pressure, and then from there they work the ball from the other side of the field. Leon Bailey first gets the ball tight on the touchline, and he still finds Kamara, and then Kamara quickly passes it to Tielemans, and then Tielemans sees Bailey continuing his run upfield, where Tielemans plays him something to run onto, and it's a really good pass by Tielemans. He didn't have many in this game; I think he only had like 15 passes, but this was a key one. And then Bailey gets basically three Arsenal players to commit to him. Where he then lays it off to John McGinn, and McGinn turns and hits the ball into his own net or into the net with his left foot. And really, it's the turn and the shot all in one motion that creates this. And McGinn sprints like a madman to get in the box when he sees Bailey's about to get onto the pass from Tielemans. So, just great energy and effort by McGinn to just get into the box, and then the turn he has full spin white, and if he doesn't hit this first time, the goal probably doesn't happen. So it's just the turn and the shot all in one motion creates this, and what a week for Leon Bailey. Leon Bailey, like I said, got that moment versus Man City, and was responsible a little bit for the assist here. Uh, but after that, it really was kind of all Arsenal. Chance with Martinelli, really good ball sent over the top. Finds Martinelli in behind. Martinez comes out, and Martinelli flicks it over him, but doesn't get enough power to necessarily bounce it in. And then Diego Carlos sprints back just in time to clear this from going into the net, or Martinelli getting his own rebound. And then probably the one of two chances that Odegaard had, and this was the first one at least was required a really good save by Emi Martinez. So, but this this deserved a goal. Konsa first wins the ball back, and he stops playing, and he gives the ball right back. Havertz drives upfield and picks out a really good cross into the box for Jesus. Havertz weirdly had a good game looking back. Watching it first time, I didn't really see it. Watching it in rewind, Havertz did had a number of really good moments that led to Arsenal's best moments. To be honest, and it just the reason why people I guess didn't really see it is none of the actions actually led to a goal itself, but should have. It could have led to something here. Jesus maybe could have actually taken this on himself with a taking a touch and trying a shot, but he lays it off to Odegaard, and then Odegaard takes his time. He looks up and tries for the corner. he goes near post instead of maybe trying to do something far post, and Martinez guesses and dives right in time to stop this, looking like Spider-Man. It's a great save, but also Odegaard helped him a little bit by taking his time and kinda telegraphed where he wanted to hit this. Uh, and then there was a good save by Martinez again, with Jesus, so Jesus did have a shot here. And Arsenal did have moments in that first half with Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli had one, and Jesus. And it was interesting that, Messi did call Emi Martinez the best keeper in the world about a year ago. And you look back and I actually remember thinking back, Martinez has just won the Golden Glove, is like someone like Real Madrid after, they had Courtois, but is some, is Barcelona maybe with Ter Stegen, was someone going to try to lure him from Aston Villa? Man United, you looked at them as maybe they're going to, move off, De Gea. Were they gonna look at Emi Martinez? Why was Emi Martinez stuck at Aston Villa? And, maybe that was just kind of a sign of where this was going to go, because when you have a world-class keeper, you're going to have a world-class team. So that's kind of, foreshadowed a little bit of this as well. I mean, my halftime thoughts were, Villa were hard to play through. They had a very compact midfield. The back four was really turning into a back three. They were playing a high line, but that's the reason why the midfield was really compact. The only option was to time a ball over the top, without necessarily, when someone had time to look up without having ball pressure on. And Arsenal were struggling a little bit with that, I thought. This is where someone like Declan Rice maybe could get better, to be I was thinking watching this, it could have been the game for Jorginho, because Jorginho's really good at doing that. But another thing too was just Paul Torres doesn't seem to play a bad pass. He's often going long too, and it was just very interesting watching him versus maybe Saliba, where I didn't see Saliba maybe being nearly as comfortable on the ball. I've kind of always looked at Saliba as kind of like the next, at least defensive wise, similar to Van Dijk in kind of stature and, playing style, at least defensively. Saliba is really good in the air as well. He's dominant. But when it comes to, Van Dijk is just as good on the ball as he is without it. It seems like Saliba maybe has, he's still young too. It is worth saying that. It's still like he has still some time to grow, at least being on the ball. That was maybe something that's showing, because again, when Villa's playing that high line, if you have a defender that can they do those balls over the top too, that can be a weapon as well. Uh, the game kinda changed a little bit with Aston Villa having the sub off Liam Bailey. It looked like he was struggling, so on came, Diaby. Diaby's still a good player, so it's almost a like for like sub, but Liam Bailey really was kind of, controlling things in that first half. And then I did feel like, if you looked at this just from a man-to-man advantage or man-to-man kind of a standpoint or kind of a matchup standpoint, Konsa versus Martinelli felt like a hard matchup for Konsa because he's not really a fullback by trade. Digna versus Saka, I felt like it's kind of a bad matchup for them too. And you were wondering, was that going to play into Arsenal's advantage at some point? It was also interesting to see Tielemans come off for Jacob Ramsey, maybe a little more legs for Jacob Ramsey. Uh, but yeah, another thing that was evident was Declan Rice. And so you can't really go at him because he's been their best player. But I was trying to think back when Liverpool beat Villa, and it was a 3-0 game kinda comfortably. It was different. That was the first game that we saw Klopp deploy Trent in a different role. He was almost like the center back. They were playing a high line as well. Matip was playing almost like a fullback when Liverpool had the ball, and it was very unique to kinda see this, but the reason why they did that is it allowed Trent to, uh, you know, basically dictate the game from a central and deeper position. And it felt like Arsenal weren't necessarily able to do that. They do have Jorginho, they do have Zinchenko, and that's maybe who can offer that, but it didn't feel like Rice was offering that. And we actually did see in the second half, Zinchenko did have a couple of those balls over the top that nearly did lead to a goal. In the 57th minute, I have Arsenal nearly scoring with Martinez making an error actually on a corner kick. Given mention how good he's been, he did almost make an error here, but it still doesn't go in. And then there was a massive chance for Odegaard. And it just feels like this he just, was off, this game, so he missed the goal actually after a really good putback from Havertz. It's a great ball over the top by Zinchenko, so that's kind of what I was saying at before. It plays in, Havertz making a run in behind Villa's high defensive line. Havertz then has a really good run and a cross, into the box, and this is, almost bread and butter for Odegaard. He's maybe 12 yards from goal, and he tries to first time this, and he just kinda slices it. And then there was a big chance for Digna that was saved, and then Saka had basically scores but is offsides. Villa again are playing a high line, And Rice actually does here. He does do well to look up, and he's able to play Saka in behind, but he waits just 1 second too late to release this pass. And if Rice just sees this a little earlier, Saka's in. And Rice did have a moment to do that, and instead he's kind of looking down. He's trying to do a dribble, and then he looks up, and it's just a little too late. It's maybe a little harsh, but it just feel like there was a moment here where it did kind of go back, and then there was a big chance for Watkins, but it was right at Raya. It did feel like Aston Villa were getting away with some stuff, and then Arsenal do score in the 90th minute, but there's like a handball by Havertz like 3 times. It was interesting because Raditara's goal was ruled out because of this, but also it seems like Cash has a handball. So could have that been a PK? And it just feels like Villa were really lucky here. It was interesting to hear the announcer say this because I didn't realize this. If Nketiah had gotten the last touch, the goal maybe would have stood because it's not the goal scorer using the actual hand infraction. I was surprised a little bit by that. I just figured a handball that led to a goal wouldn't count. Uh, and then Nketiah did have a chance a little bit at the end, but the header couldn't get the header on goal. Uh, it really was an even game though. If Arsenal had won this, 2-1, scraping something in the second half, you would have understood it. They did have 4 big chances and 4 missed. I mean, their XG was 1.4 and Aston Villa was 1.5. Villa got the early goal and just were really dogged and defending and what they wanted to do, just 200 passes in this game. And I do feel like maybe the game plan did change. They had something to defend and they wanted to do it. Emi Martinez helped out a little bit with a couple of really big saves. I mean, Villa were organized and just they made the challenges to cut off the transition moments when they needed the challenges to cut off those transition moments. I guess when they needed to. Again, what a week though! 6 points over Man City and Arsenal, and really an inspiring story. For Unai Emery to come back and to kind of haunt Arsenal a little bit. It's not the second time, or it's not the first time either. I believe his Villarreal team beat Arsenal head to head in a Europa knockout, if I remember right. And sticking with Aston Villa, just Emi Martinez is, not just save ability, his ability to find teammates, at least for Man City, the 90% accuracy. He was only 50% for Arsenal. I thought that was interesting. But just like the workout, the world class saves, the work rate without the ball is immense. They have a pretty good midfield balance. With Tielemans, Tielemans has that eye for a pass. Kamara and Louise are really good. Louise is like beyond press resistant. Kamara is really good at just kind of timing challenges and being in the right spot at the right time. And McGinn was 10 for 20 in ground duels. And you figure out with a midfield with Declan Rice, Aston Villa were not afraid of Arsenal's midfield the way that Wolves were just a couple of days ago. So that was different. And then Diego Carlos and Pau Torres and Konsa, showed what they can offer a little bit defensively. Though Konsa did have a little bit of a rough go of it with Martinelli running behind him. Uh, and, Leon Bailey does get the knock, and that did, that did, bring to light, can this team really survive a long run out, if they do have, if they do have to deal with injury issues like every other, team is dealing with. Uh, and then again, it is kind of awesome how this is happening, and, you speak about, Unai Emery coming in, and there's a lot of players have, turned their games around, but I think probably the best one that's it kind of symbolizes what him coming to Villa has changed is John McGinn. So I feel like it's fitting that he gets the game winning goal because I just didn't feel like he had a lot of this to his game. He had the ground duels, he had the work rate, but I remember watching him when Gerard was the manager. There'd be times when I thought he'd be a liability on the ball. He'd get it and just kick it long. He had a heavy touch. He looks entirely different now. I do put that into coaching, and again, whether or not Villa are contenders or not is going to be hell to win at that stadium, and Liverpool have to go there, which sucks. Uh, so I mean, the question is, can they find a way to make that away form their home form? Have they find a way to rotate Watkins' legs? But with that keeper, he'll keep them in any game too. And then with Arsenal, it's not the end of the world. The Luton result I think would have been worse. They dropped points. They played pretty well. So I don't think they have a lot to be upset about. Havertz, I still don't know how he fits in, but he's starting to be better for them. He had another good game. I think he had his best game for Luton Town too. He could have set up maybe 2 goals in this game. And Zinchenko on the ball. He was doing what I was wondering. Who in Arsenal is going to be able to pick out these runs and Zinchenko was orchestrating things, in the second half, and then Rice was just kind of a different number 6 than they needed this game, though he's been fantastic, going forward in these other games. Odegaard did have a couple chances to score, but that said, I like that he didn't shine in this game. Sometimes I feel like he can be invisible in some of these big contests, and here he was looking for the ball, trying to, be near the box, trying to score, and it didn't come off, but at least, I liked him getting those chances. And then, I don't necessarily have to go Etzaliba again, but, let's see. I do feel like there's room for this team to improve, and they're only, like, what, a point or 2 off Liverpool, for first. ESR made an appearance yesterday in the Champions League. Reece Nelson, did as well. It's time to get him some minutes. Maybe rest Saka some. That could maybe be something to think about. Reece Nelson showed something yesterday. I know it was kind of a dead rubber game, versus PSV. Uh, Reece Nelson was good though, and I do think it's time. Maybe he's had some injury problems to start the game, to start the season, because we haven't really seen him either. He's got something different to his game, and I feel like they could use him. So why not? And there are other Fabio Vieira at least was starting, was helping them in the beginning of the season. We haven't seen him since that red card. Yeah, there's still a way for this team to improve. And KDM maybe can get going. If not January, they probably will be looking for a striker themselves. So if you're an Arsenal fan, you have to love where you are. Also, it does feel like Man City is weaker than they were last season. So if you can just keep the points that you were at last season, that's probably going to be enough to win. I have a feeling 88 points will win this league. I don't see anyone getting 90. That could age horribly, but that's just kind of where City are going to get Kevin De Bruyne back. That could change them a lot. But defensively, they've been vulnerable in a way that just people weren't expecting. So I don't necessarily know. And then we'll move on to Liverpool and Crystal Palace, and I'm a little bit more in a decent mood because all of a sudden you wake up and they're first in the table when maybe it doesn't feel like they should be, because they've had a number of weird game weeks where they've just found a way to. Klopp's made some really good changes in the second half and found a way to take max points when maybe they shouldn't have. Now that said, that's basically how they won the title from the 19 to 20 season. There were a number of games when in the 65th, 70th minute, things were to Liverpool were either down a goal or maybe tied, and from that moment on, they actually went on to get the goals needed to take max points in that season stretch. So I don't necessarily know what to think. Still, they haven't. They haven't been their flying best, at least with Fulham, Sheffield, and Crystal Palace here. But it doesn't matter because they've taken max points. So it was good that they were able to beat Sheffield. Though I did feel like that was going into because it was away to Sheffield too, yeah, away to Palace too. These weren't easy games. So it was an early Saturday kickoff, which Klopp has been spoken. He's been very outspoken that he doesn't necessarily like. Uh, and so there was a chance to go above Arsenal before the Aston Villa game started, and so that was important. But too is you're going into these hostile away crowds, and you have to have a little rotation here and there. But it's just another thing too is you had that really emotional win over Fulham, and to do it the way they did, was that going to be enough to get you to do something versus away to Sheffield in just miserable conditions beyond belief? And they were able to eke out a really ugly 2-0 win. And then in this one, they were able to eke out a really ugly 2-1 win, where probably it doesn't happen without that Andre Ayew red card. I will say that. It was a 1-0 game. Liverpool were really struggling. I think they had 2 shots all game. I think they only had 1 shot on target. So that just kind of showed you where the game was. And it looked like there was maybe an upset on the cards. Allison had to make 2 really big saves as well. Palace get the go-ahead goal with a PK. I did feel like the PK was soft, but that's what happened. Palace also scored before this, but the ref actually called it back for a foul on Endo, and that kind of went into a storyline itself. Alex McAllister got stepped on versus Sheffield, and that really that could possibly be a pretty big miss because Endo Klopp went back to his kind of 4-3-3. Trent in a bit of a different position. Endo was kind of stranded in a lot of respects. Slabberschlei and Gravenberch were trying to play as attacking aides. Endo was all alone, um, And there were a couple times when he got the ball, and a couple really poor turnovers led to a lot of Palace like really good counterattacks. And but really the big storyline was Allison was back, and maybe returned a little earlier than we expected, and he made two insane saves that really did keep this from Palace possibly winning this. Another thing too was Kwanzaa started at right back with Virgil, and I was wondering, can Kwanzaa play on the right side, because he had been playing, a left preferred in Europa. He had basically been giving Virgil van Dijk some rest minutes. I didn't think he had a bad game. Now, the build-up and they did have build-up issues, and I don't necessarily know if it was because Quanta was a poor passer. I did feel like he was pretty good defensively, and he's at fault a little bit for the PK, but I just feel like the PK was just really, really harsh. Um, and then Salah, Nunez, and Diaz. Diaz didn't necessarily have his best game. Gravenberch struggled a little bit as well, and so Klopp made some changes in this game, and that kind of did kind of help them out as well. And then with Palace, no Elisa, you looked at this lineup and it was like Schlupp, Edward, and Ayew. It was Will Hughes, Lerma, and then Chris Richards, who isn't really a DM. They didn't even have Tyreek Mitchell. It was Nathaniel Klein. And you were like, "This is you have to take max points here. This is not the most strong Palace team." And the first 5 minutes, Liverpool did start off well, but then just a late pass nearly sent Palace on a counter, forcing Van Dijk to have a really big stop, and then Palace had a counter again, and it forced a really big save by Allison. And really, the theme of the game was just Liverpool kind of being a little sloppy in possession, and this was just a very good save by Allison. And then Endo was caught in possession again, and it led to a Palace. Well, basically led to a Palace PK. Uh, but the ref judged to have been a little bit of a foul from Will Hughes. He is a little harsh. He comes into the back, and that's where Endo loses the ball. But I do think he's a little weak, and they get lucky here, because VAR overturned this. That doesn't always happen. And just 40 minutes into the game, it was very stop and start, lots of fouls, free kicks, restarts. There was little ways to create momentum, and there was no shots on goal through the first 45 minutes. And so Klopp went in and did make some changes. He brought Joe Gomez on for Endo and moved Trent to the six. And so we saw Trent in midfield for like just full time, and Gomez to actually be full time right back. And then Palace took off Edward for Mateta. And then basically one thing that's weird is let's see, in like the 55th minute, uh, it looks like Palace have a little bit of a fraction. There's a cross into the box. Kwanzaa is trying to stop Mateta, and it looks like he gets some of the ball, or he's going for the ball, and Mateta has a touch that like basically takes the ball away from goal, and then Kwanzaa like follows through in his leg. It's not like Mateta even like goes to ground. The contact is minimal, at least in my perspective. I could be biased. But the thing that's weird is they took a look at this, and they took like 5 minutes before like stopping the play. But so they get the PK rewarded, and Mateta converts, and then Liverpool did have a chance to respond. There was a free kick, and then Nunez of the ball, is crossed in, and Nunez can't necessarily get to it. That I can't really go at Nunez for that. But Nunez that wasn't necessarily able to really be impactful in this game. I did feel like I missed Jota. I was fearing, it's games like this where just versus low blocks. Jota is just able to, cleverly get past the defender in the box when Liverpool have the ball a lot. Jota kind of struggles a little bit in these more games that are transition based. When Jota can get the ball into the box, he can make someone miss and he can get a shot on goal. That's when he really, stars. And just these low block teams defending with everyone in behind the ball, it sometimes can give them fits. And so Klopp did make some changes. So he already brought on Joe Gomez, brought on move Trent, and he brought on Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. And by doing that, that really did kind of change the game. And then it's almost simultaneously, Ayew got sent off, and so it is two dumb yellows. He's first trying to stop a quick free kick, and then the second one comes from him trying to stop a potential counterattack. Go Joe Gomez is running past Elliott. Elliott's about to pass him the ball. There's no one near Joe Gomez, so he's going to be able to run all the way up to the goal. So it makes sense that this was a second yellow. And then just a couple minutes after that, Liverpool do get their game tying goal, and it comes with Salah, and Salah gets his 200th Liverpool goal. And I'm glad this is over because it felt like it'd been 3 or 4 games where he had been stuck on 199, and it feels whenever he's been close to a milestone, he goes on a route. It feels like he tries too hard, and it's very fitting that this goes in from a deflection because it felt like it was gonna either come this way, maybe it was gonna come from a PK, but just I remember when, it was during, the bubble ball when Liverpool had a chance or Salah had a chance to win the Golden Boot. He was like 2 or 3 off. I forget who actually ended up winning it that season, but he basically went scoreless, in that little 8-game stretch after the restart, and it was because he was just trying to score all the time, and it just he wasn't playing himself. But here, there was a little reflection, but it really came from, just finally sending a ball into a box with numbers in the area. They had 8 players into the Palace box, and they can do this because of that red card. And it's just a ball sent in, by Cody Gakpo, but after Gomez picks him out, so Gomez is able to play a little higher up as well, and, Gakpo gets to the byline and sends the ball into the box, and then, uh, Palace weren't able to clear it, and then Curtis Jones does really well to collect this and then square it quickly to Salah, and basically, if Salah doesn't score this, I think Curtis Jones, gets a PK, awarded to him as well, so good play by Curtis Jones, and then, Gomez sends in another lovely cross that nearly caused, Sam Johnson some trouble, so I thought Joe Gomez coming in and crossing the ball from the wide areas, opening up the wing, helped change the game as well, so it forced Palace to move out and defend a little bit more of the field. And because Liverpool are able to get more numbers into the penalty box, you need to stop that supply coming in. And then one thing that was weird is Palace had to sub their keeper off, and so that possibly factored in how Liverpool won this game as well. Because in the 90th minute, Elliott gets a golazo, and he receives the ball from Salah, but he still has a lot to do. He has a little drop of the shoulder and cut the full Mateta, and then has a really nice dribble to create a little space for himself, and then he gets near the Palace goal, like top of the box, and he arrows in a left foot, basically beating the keeper at near post. And maybe with Sam Johnson in, maybe he saves us because I think this keeper is making his debut, and I'm not necessarily going to go with the keeper for saying he should save this because this is a good goal by Elliott. But that maybe did factor in a little bit. And then Luis Diaz did score, but it was offsides. It was great through ball again by Elliott. So again, Elliott coming in, just the ball moved quicker when Elliott came into the side. It also helped Palace playing down a man. So it's harder to mark people, and Elliott recognized where the spaces were. So it was a good change by Klopp. Uh, and so the game absolutely did change with red, but also I think the game changed a little bit with the subs. Um, and then basically it got to like the 90th minute, 99th minute, and all I'm saying to myself is just don't give them a stupid free kick because it was only a 1 goal lead. That was the only way when a team is down a man. Free kicks and corner kicks are like the only way, set plays. They're the only way that a team is really going to be able be able to at least be competitive. Have that man advantage, not really show up. And here, Elise whips in just a perfect. I think Luis Diaz makes a dumb foul. He's too aggressive, and Elise whips in a just terrific ball back post. It picks out Anderson, and it forces a big Allison save. And again, another keeper. Maybe this does creep in, and so Allison was big. It was good to have him back, and it showed up. I would have preferred not to have have to have that moment because that if nothing else woke me up, that woke me up. Uh, but yeah, really, it's a story about Liverpool. I mean, few games in where Liverpool haven't been at their best, but managed to still not get beat, and not just that, win. And all games kind of, the games were in the balance going into the 90th minute or like 85th minute. Liverpool 14 shots, only 2 on target, and 2 big chances created, two missed. Palace 8 shots and 4. Palace did have probably the best looks though. Again with the Allison saves. So Liverpool do survive the low block run with Sheffield and Palace, and now they get a different game with Man United, who are going to look at that game like their Super Bowl. Uh, and usually it is these games that are thorns in Klopp's sides, which I've explained. It's good to get through this December stretch so far, being relatively injury free. They did lose McAllister, and they have lost. It looks like Matip maybe for the rest of the season, and that does hurt their center back depth. Matip's also just he's so gangly. He's really good at just making a couple people miss, and like I mentioned, how having a wide player being able to make a fullback miss, having a center back that can dribble a go upfield, that can create a goal scoring opportunity too. Because again, it forces everyone to shift over, and Matip's like weirdly really good at that, and so they're going to miss something like Kanate doesn't really do that. Allison Beck was big, and Kwanzaa has had his debut. He's young. I didn't think he played poor. So I mean, we'll have to just see how this center back rotation works out. Uh, I don't feel like if Liverpool don't do something in January, maybe to look at a number six, maybe look at center back depth. I don't think that they are going to be title contenders or title favorites. Um, I could be wrong. I've been doubting this team pretty much the entire time, so shame on me. I should believe my team more. Trent Alexander-Arnold though created six chances in this game, two big chances, and Klopp again moved him into the midfield. As just in general, full time in that second half, and without Alexis McAllister versus Man United, I don't know if I want to see Endo. I think I want to see Trent Alexander played here. We'll have to see. And then Harvey Elliott, something happened where he's like a mini Iniesta because and I want to I don't want to say that too lightly. I am smiling. The turns, quick passing decisions, the ball moves so quick when he plays, and he starred in their last Europa game as well. And just the game changed when he came on, and again, just Elliott makes the ball move, and it doesn't stick with him. And outside of Alexis and Thiago, I think he's the best in making quick decisions and getting the ball quickly out of his feet. He just seems to recognize where the gaps were in that Palace team. Um, and the second half changes worked. Joe Gomez coming in inserted a bit of a different energy, a different attacking play that they were lacking. Gomez was getting wide. And another thing that does, if Gomez can be that wing option, that almost just in general forces Salah to play closer to goal. I just hate Salah, being on the touchline, especially in these like big games. I want my best finisher to be in the box. So that just, a little pet peeve. So I did feel like, missing, Alexis McAllister was struggling, because Endo just didn't offer the same things as a single pivot. Sometimes, Klopp's been doing, Trent and Endo together, but in this game, he was a little more isolated. I thought in build-up they struggled, and that's where, someone like Alexis McAllister is really good. McAllister maybe isn't the best at stopping transitions and, winning duels back, winning the ball back, but when Liverpool are trying to pass from the back, McAllister is a gem, and he's really good at quickly getting out of his feet and turning. Endo isn't necessarily the same player, and he did struggle a little bit. And so, if Man United are going to have get a surprise, that's probably the best place to do it. They're going to be able to, if it's Endo or someone else, maybe sometimes Trent isn't the best at doing this either. Maybe you can get a turnover in that area and get some kind of counter. I don't know. Man United being without Bruno is going to be interesting as well. Uh, and I did feel like Diego Jota's absences were showing up, and that is kind of where we are. Man United on the weekend. Man United got thumped 7-0 last year at Anfield. That was only a 1-0 game though. Going into the second half, and then Man United just crumbled. It is going to be interesting without McAllister. I would possibly like to see Cody Gakpo and Nunez and Salah as kind of the front three, uh, because Gakpo and Nunez were so good versus Man United team last year. Szoboszlai at left wing, I've seen people suggest that intrigues me a little bit, but I do feel like you need Szoboszlai sometimes offers his engine a little bit more, and Man United are going to have that counter ability either with Garnacho or Rashford. So I don't necessarily know about that. I honestly, I really think I want to see Curtis Jones. I kind of went at him a little bit. I just feel like he's really good. His defensive work rate, again, Man United are going to try to counter just in general. So Curtis Jones is going to be able to win the ball back, and he's probably one of the best pressers on the ball that in that Liverpool side. And, Man United showed versus Bournemouth, you can really press them into turnovers and being sloppy. So I probably want to see Curtis Jones. And then I'd probably like to see Trent. Trent tried at that number six. You can probably do it now. And then make Gomez at right back. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if Klopp, changes it up, or maybe we'll just see Trent, general is right back role. Maybe we'll just see Indo. We'll have to see. Um, and then Kanate probably preferred. Kanate versus Hoyland. I probably prefer Kanate to at least I feel like that would probably be a decent matchup. We'll have to see what even Man United roll with, because again they don't have anything to play for now. They're probably really upset. So this can go two ways. It can either really motivate them, where they look at this as this is a chance to rebound their season, to kind of restart it, or they can really make this crumble. We'll have to see. So I do think it's a dangerous game going in, even though it is at Anfield. Um, if it was at Man United, I'd probably be even a little bit more kind of nervous. At Anfield, I probably do feel somewhat comfortable, but games aren't played on paper. And then with Palace, you see what they're missing without Eze, without Elise wasn't able to go at least until like the 65th minute. No Decore as well. And they lost their keeper in this game. It's just really unfortunate form for Palace. And you look at their schedule; it's daunting from here, though. So going back from November 11th, they've lost four and drawn one. I think they drew to West Ham, and now they have Man City next, Brighton at home, Chelsea, Brentford at home, Arsenal, and then I think it's Sheffield on January 30th. And you look at that, that is really daunting. I mean, games aren't played on paper. I don't know how long they'll be without Eze, but to me, it doesn't look like there's maybe more than 4, maybe 5 points max on that, run of fixtures, if that. And so if Sheffield or Burnley or someone can just win 2 or 3 games, you're gonna see, that gap really tighten. And that game versus Sheffield on the 30th could be within, 3 points of Sheffield, maybe, tying them. I don't necessarily that would require Sheffield to actually get through a pretty hard schedule there themselves. They've got Chelsea, Villa, and City in the next 3. You don't really imagine, they did look better a little bit uh, with, uh, with their new manager coming in, but, I don't necessarily know if I would necessarily believe that. Though they did, they did get their first win. But I don't know. I'm notorious for kind of doubting Roy Hodgson, and he usually always finds a way. But with this, it's just this would worry me if I was a Palace fan, most definitely, because they just don't really have the quality on the bench, and unless he decides to let his youngsters have a chance, but I don't necessarily know if you can. Maybe not. Why not? You look at this run of fixtures. You're not really going to probably be competitive in many of them. Why not see what the youngsters can maybe do? I don't know. We'll have to see what Hodgson does. Uh, and then I spoke about it a little bit. I'll move on to Manchester and Bournemouth. See how we're doing for time. And I don't really know if that's good or bad. Uh, they do go on to lose 3-0. Manchester had that win over Chelsea. Rashford was benched. He had 29 shots and 12 on target. The vibes seemed good again. They were going to Old Trafford again, and Bournemouth were on their own run of good form. They had just beaten Palace 2-0, and they've starting to look on fire. Ryan Christie and Cook midfield, winning the ball back, finding V to their siding attacking core, and they're quite stacked for attacking options because you all of a sudden you look and they've got Watatara on the bench. They've got Philip Billing, someone to bring on the bench. They've got Senestera to bring on the bench. And, Tavernier, Solanke, and Semenyo as a front three with Clivert, kind of being in a little bit of that 10 role with Christie and Cook. All of us, yeah, it's a consistent lineup he's able to run out. Bournemouth only have to play once a week. This is a dangerous team for a lot of teams now because of the kind of physical nature of their attackers. And they've got a midfield that know how to win the ball back and press. They're really good at front pressing too. And they really just they looked at what Man United were and they didn't respect them. Um, and you looked at what Man United went with. It was Maguire and Luke Shaw at center back, and then Reguilon as kind of the left back. I feel like Luke Shaw is a better left back just in general than Reguilon. Two, you're missing what Shaw can offer with his delivery because he can create goals by himself in that kind of instance. And Luke Shaw also isn't a center back. I understand the idea because Maguire is so poor for pace. You need to somewhat have someone kind of somewhat with recoverability near Maguire, so it's not all terrible. But this was not the matchup for him, and as we saw, Luke Shaw was responsible for 2 of these goals. Um, and Maguire, just I don't necessarily need to say more about him. The thing that's weird though is Varane has been healthy for like 3, like almost like 6 games in a row now, and he's just been not used. I think the last game he played in was that Copenhagen game after Rashford got the red card, and I don't know if Ten Hag has blamed Varane or not, but he's been healthy and just not used, and we actually saw him yesterday in the Bayern Munich game, in the game that they had to win, and I don't think that's a good look for Ten Hag either. I don't know if he was trying to set an example or not, but it's not a good example when in the game that you have to actually win, you finally roll out your better player. That to me says that to me makes me look at Ten Hag a little differently. To be honest, I didn't necessarily like that, and so uh, I don't know if there's been something behind the scenes or not. But it's been weird, and these he's been rolling out these very weird, CB lineups. It's been McGuire, it's been Johnny Evans, it's been McGuire and Evans actually at some points. And you look at where Man United are as a team, where has been all of the issues. And people are going to look at Onana. I think it's the back line. I think everything really does start at the back line, and it's crazy to me that Harry Maguire won EPL Player of the Year. Maybe people have seen stuff that I haven't been seeing, because I just feel like, regardless, maybe Maguire's good at heading the ball away and defending, because of the way that you can't play a high line with him. He creates gaps in your midfield just by being there. Um, sometimes it's just Amrabat kind of having to play midfield by himself because he's got Bruno and McTominay that just like just being, just attack minded players. And just the kind of you look at Man United and how much space they usually play with and give up. This was a recipe for disaster for a team like Bournemouth that have the kind of pace and counter ability that they have. And basically, it seemed like Bournemouth out United Man United. And what I mean by that is, Man United like to play counter ball. Bournemouth basically did that themselves. They sat back, they waited for Man United to make mistakes, and then quickly broke on them. And it could have been a lot more than what it was. So we get to the first goal, and it's really it's a Bournemouth's first like try to press United high, and they first run at Solanke. Solanke then Semenyo closes down on Regulon, and United eventually find a way out by Luke Shaw carrying the ball upfield, which is not really ideal as your center back because Luke Shaw loses it after a great tackle by Clivert, and then from there Bournemouth are the team looking to get in behind, and Man United do to get bodies back to stop this, but everything looks kind of set to recycle, and then Bruno or Regulon tries a really like risky soft pass to McTominay, and he shouldn't do this. He should just either just go long, essentially. Cook reads it and immediately breaks and wins the ball off him. And McTominay maybe could do better here. Maybe could foul Cook. Anything is better than what he does. And it's just so McTominay isn't strong enough here, and Cook just weeds it and breaks off him. And then from there, he's got the momentum. Amrabat is too slow to get into pace to try to stop him, and it seems Shaw and Maguire are too slow to recognize. Oh, there's going to be danger here, and Cook with all that pace and sprinting, momentum, gets to the top of the box and basically squares the ball into Solanke's path, and it's just a little tap in for Solanke here. Um, and again, Shaw and Maguire just are too late to recognize here. And it's from Man United's perspective, I think this is a really cheap goal to give away. And again, both center backs are just caught flat-footed. And then there's a chance for Bournemouth to make this worse, and it's a great Onana save. This is offside, but it's still a good save. It's just a long ball, though. A long ball picks out to Semenyo, and then he wins the first header, and then Clivert is strong in another 50-50 duel to help Bournemouth keep the ball, and Semenyo gets it, runs towards goal, and eventually ball is whipped in. Solanke has a header like 5 yards from goal, and it's a ton of power, but it's close enough to it against Onana, but Onana does react and does make a good save. I think Amrabat and Reguilon there were too weak again, and Solanke is offsides, but this is poor marking I think from Man United. And then there's a chance where Solanke hits the post, and it's a poor pass by McTominay. Just gives the ball away and allows Bournemouth to quickly break up into a counter. Cook wins the ball back and plays in a great through ball to find Solanke, and who's made a run unmarked, and he does everything great here. Just kind of hits the shot a couple inches too wide. Um, and right before halftime, it looked like Bournemouth were about to get a second, but Maguire actually did have a good challenge. So you can, I guess, praise him a little bit, I guess, for that. Uh, so I mean, halftime thought it was Bournemouth still have had the better chances, but it still only is one. United were getting a little bit better in the second half. They did have a couple more chances in the Bournemouth penalty area. There was a chance for Dallo, probably the best move of the game. A long switch of play, good combination between Anthony and Dallo. Anthony plays Dallo in, who's continued his run to the box. But Dallo goes for goal from a tight angle and he hits the side netting when Hoyland is open for a square ball. And Hoyland has since come in and he drives a foul. There's a free kick opportunity. It was weird how Martial got the start in this game. Hoyland is better, and just Martial just wasn't doing this. He wasn't doing enough to help Man United keep the ball in. Another thing too was just the wide players. There was no combination play, and when everyone got near the penalty area, it was all let me try to be the hero mode. Let me go for the goal. There was no team play essentially, and I know that he kind of makes me sound like a curmudgeon. Um, old person, but that is essentially that's at least a little bit what I saw. You see it a little bit here for the Dallo kill. Instead of going for the hero moment, you can maybe square it to Hoyland, um, and Bournemouth do that. So here in they get the second goal, and this kind of killed the game off with Billing. It came at a good time. Man United were starting to get a couple more dangerous spots in possession, at least. Bruno I guess McTominay had a couple shots in the second half that forced pretty good blocks. They didn't get to the keeper, but at least they were dangerous moments. But all of this again is Man United's own doing. Luke Shaw is on the ball. There's no one near him, and he does a weird floated ball trying to pick out Amrabat out of I don't know how. I guess a needle into a barn. I guess I could say it's a very tight angle, tight spot to hit this ball, and he overhits it, and Bournemouth pounce on it and quickly move the ball upfield. They find Solanke, and then what does Solanke do? He doesn't just try to go for himself. He quickly finds Tavernier, and Tavernier squares up, and Tavernier doesn't try for like the hero curler. No, Tavernier sees Philip Billing completely unmarked, and Billing is 6'6", and I think Luke Shaw is maybe 6 foot, and he sets him up and floats a ball towards the back post, and Philip Billing just basically dunks on him, dunks on for the easy header. Onana has no chance here. Regulon is too upfield when Luke Shaw makes this bad pass, and that's the reason why he's out of the position. A lot of people are going at Regulon. I think you can go with Luke Shaw, and not necessarily just for the dunking. Just it's a really terrible pass. But again, this goal still has a lot. Bournemouth still has a lot to do to score this. And again, I mentioned how when you don't see this with Man United with the team play, you do see it here. And then Bournemouth quickly get the third on a corner kick. Neither fullback were good in this game, and so Dallo first gives away a cheap foul, so that gives a cheap free kick for Bournemouth to again target Solanke, target Philip Billing. The ball is poor, and it looks like he's going out, but Dallo clears it just to make sure it goes out, and then on the corner kick they score. It's a free header for Senese. I think Harry Maguire could do better on the header, but there's no one on the back post. And super delivery by Tavernier, and Onana had really no chance. And it could have been four. Wadatar had since come in and got lucky to just, I guess maybe unlucky, because he tries to get past Onana, and Onana I guess saves it, and it kind of deflects off. Watatari's hand. But Maguire here is caught on the ball. And again, it leads to another late counter that came from Man United just being bad in possession. And it could have been worse. I mean, three big chances for Bournemouth, 10 shots and four on target. They didn't have, enough that many shots. But they made him count, and Man United had 20, but only three on target. Just everyone was just trying to again go for the hero moment. They get into good spots and then just balloon it over. Um, Man United's XG was 1.1, Bournemouth 1.4. Man United did have 70% of the ball, but it's what you do with the ball that matters. I thought this was interesting. It was 6 for 12 for crosses versus 5 for 27. So I don't know if it was Solanke versus Martial or not. But that was kind of interesting to me. Um, and so I mean, Man United did have a majority of the ball and majority of the passes, but again, it's what you do with it. I mean, with Bournemouth, what a turnaround this has been. Because I did that show with Jeremy. I guess maybe early mid October, and I was wondering if Iriola was going to be the first manager to get fired because it just felt like out of all the teams that were struggling, you looked at their squad because I think they were actually in last place at one point in mid October. Their roster had the most potential, or at least attacking potential goals in them essentially. And you were like, well, he's not really getting the what out of his players that Gary O'Neill was, and now that has quickly turned around. I think it's helped that Tavernier is healthy again. That's really helped because it seemed even last season when he played, it seemed like he elevated their level when he was able to feature for them. But I think really the main thing is Lewis Cook and Christie have come in and really formed a good partnership. For some reason, that midfield was not working in the beginning of the season, and then they got Alex Scott for a couple of games, and he was making them look a little bit better, and then he got hurt again, and it's allowed Lewis Cook and Ryan Christie to form a pretty good partnership. And Christie's been man of the match for a couple of their games. I think he was man of the match versus Aston Villa, and here was the Lewis Cook show. And so I like that. And then Solanke and Philip Billing are back. Semenyo has been a part of this turn in form as well. And they've got a lot of Billing, Watatari, and Sinistera on the bench. There's a lot that they can do here. Another thing that's been interesting is Adam Smith has since been the preferred choice for right back over someone as like Max Aarons, who's a little more attack minded, but maybe a little defensively a little vulnerable. And so uh, I'm willing to admit I was wrong. I was entirely wrong about this. Yeah, they still have Tyler Adams to maybe find a way to fit into this side as well as Alex Scott. So it feels like there's a chance for this team to even continue their growth. And I thought he'd be on the hot seat, and maybe he was in the beginning. I can't say, but he has really turned this around, and good for him. I remember reading that he was thought up highly in Spain for what he was doing with Rayo Vallecano, because he came in with a very a promoted side, I guess, in Spain, kept them up, kept them mid-table, like it's like 10th or 8th. Did a cup run with them, and apparently he did it on a very tight budget, and maybe Bournemouth kind of saw that with him, and that's pretty cool. Also, it's pretty cool that as a manager, he beats Man United at Old Trafford. Apparently, as a player, he was on that Atletico Bilbao team, 13 or so years ago. That they said when Ika Muain was playing, and they knocked Man United in a Europa game. So, but I mean, the way he's got them flying, the way that they press teams really high up, they just from the goal kick, they did not respect Man United being able to pass from the back, and the physical nature of their attacking players, it's intimidating. And just the way that they're able to, win the ball back and set teams, to play off the counter, and that, Clivert, Christie, and Cook did a better job of offering protection to the back line and feeding forward balls to their attackers than Man United's midfield three did. And to get to Man United, I I how fast things change, from the, performance from Chelsea to this. There's all that talk of, "Oh, we're back," and, maybe not. It does feel like that Chelsea one was the outlier, and this is more the norm. Ten Hag's selections have been weird. Luke Shaw isn't a center back. You miss what he offers with his crossing. You miss what he offers, as a fullback, and you obviously he gets dunked on. And what's weird is it's kind of weird to have that kind of thought because if Lisandro Martinez is playing in this game, this probably happens as well. It's not just Luke Shaw being center back. You're missing You're not having Varane in the squad, and I don't get it. I really don't. Harry Maguire been named EPL Player of November. It makes me think that that award doesn't really mean anything. Uh, and I mean, he did have a good block in the game, and maybe he has gotten better, spraying the ball a little wide. It just it feels like you have to change how you play just for having him into the side. Now Varane's not necessarily flight for foot either, but he's just to me he's a better defender. Um, but just elite teams now are good at building possession from the back and playing through teams pressing them. And Bournemouth just caused Man United to turn the ball over and over. And McTominay is a second striker to me. He's not a pivot midfielder. And, you think of sloppy and, just too many sloppy, risky, lazy, misplayed passes from him this game, and he's really not an option to pass to when they're trying to build from the back, and that hurts Onana too. And when McTominay and Bruno, go upfield, it's just Amrabat or it's Casemiro in the beginning of the season, or it's Kobe Mano, who play by themselves. And if it's not going to be McTominay, they're going to try maybe Mason Mount when he gets back healthy. I think it's still gonna be the same problem, and so you found a way to kind of create this a little bit on yourselves. No Bruno for Liverpool is going to be I wonder if we see actually Kobe Mano. I think Casemiro is close to being back. Maybe we see Casemiro back. I don't know. I do think we're gonna get a response from Man United first in that Liverpool game, but we'll have to see. Uh and then, Bayern got embarrassed on the weekend, themselves, and so we saw them, go with a pretty hard lineup last night, and, because of what happened, they're now out of Europe entirely, and so there's a lot of pressure now on Erik ten Hag. Should he stay or should he go? But I do think it's hard to see where the direction of the club is. So I want to kind of get this point out. Um, I think Erik ten Hag did positive things last year, but it wasn't just him. Casemiro, Varane, Lisandro Martinez, Luke Shaw, Christian Eriksen, David De Gea aren't there this year, or at least they haven't had been at the same levels. And De Gea had the most clean sheets, but also made plenty of mistakes. He was the reason why they got out of Europa versus Sevilla. Another thing too is they had a 6'7" Dutchman who combined really well, and he fed Rashford in behind. There was a lot of attention drawn on him that allowed Rashford to have a lot of freedom. Man United destroyed Barcelona by playing Wout Weghorst. Sancho had a decent spell for them last season, and they've it feels like what they've lost to what they've brought in, they're worse off. And so I don't necessarily think this is all Ten Hag. Uh, Ericsson, Casemiro, and Varane are on the wrong end of 30, and it's always a race of time of how much you can get out of players of that age. Mason Mount hasn't really worked out for them so far. Maybe he has had some injury setbacks, but and maybe he'll have a good campaign for them in the second half of the season. But it just hasn't worked to date. And another thing too is what is Eric Ten Hag? I thought he was because of the football that they played at Ajax, and because of the couple of the cup runs, Champions League runs, that he was responsible with. Uh, I thought he was a tactician as well as someone that was good at managing a locker room, and maybe it seems he really is a disciplinarian. And it worked with Ronaldo, and he was praised for what he did with Ronaldo. I don't think it's worked out with Sancho, and I'm curious if maybe a couple players have spoken out and disagreed with how Sancho has been treated. Maybe that's the reason why someone like Varane hasn't played. That's entirely speculation. But another thing too is there's a lot of players leaking stuff. So maybe Varane's been, I don't know. I don't know if Varane's been leaking and been caught. There's Varane's been disciplined in a way that just doesn't make sense because he's been healthy and fit on the bench, and he hasn't gotten any minutes until yesterday when they had to win the game. Um, and when he was subbed off, they did, there was a handshake, and that didn't seem to be any kind of visible disagreement. But I just think that's weird. But I am speculating, so I probably should stop. But and so that's where Man United are. And but we probably will see a reaction this weekend. I do feel like we're going to see their best performance versus Liverpool. So hopefully hopefully Liverpool are up for it. And then that's how one side of Manchester is doing. How's the other? How's the blue half in Manchester City and Luton Town? And Luton Town do get show up again. And they actually they lead again, and unfortunately, they gave up 2 really stupid goals, so that didn't really last. So Adebayo gets the first one, and then Bernardo Silva, and then Jack Grealish, just, I guess, maybe 90 minutes or 90 seconds after the Bernardo Silva one. Man City was on a 4-game streak without a win. No Holland for this game as well. You were wondering how is that gonna make him look? No Doku as well, but they did get Ratchet back, and City don't lose when he plays. And then Luton Town was, a Declan Rice game winner from a very memorable, point that night. Also, Russ Barkley looked really good for them that game. And Russ Barkley didn't shine nearly as much. He didn't get to have that scoring moment. He was good though in this game as well. Rodri still got the better of him in some instances, but Barkley had a big moment that led to Luton's first goal, which I'll get to. Um, Also, it is worth saying that this is maybe the most financial disparity mismatch I think the Premier League has ever seen, with Man City and little Luton Town. And they had to change it up a little bit. No Kabori because he is a City player. But it was interesting to see no Ogbene. But we did see Doughty, Barkley, Nakamba, which we haven't seen him a ton of games, and then Ryan Giles, and then Townsend, Adebayo, and Brown. So we didn't see Carlton Morris. And then with Man City, we did see a bit of a shakeup. So Rodri back, and then Kovacic. Kovacic was back, and that was the pivot. We actually saw midfielders played in midfield. No Stones inverted stuff. No Gvardiol or Ake or Akanji inverted stuff. We saw Bernardo Silva, Foden, and then Grealish, and then Alvarez. Alvarez instead of Holland. And I was wondering, kind of seeing this because this is similar to what City played versus Liverpool. Um, Back in last spring when City probably looked their best that they had I guess all spring to be honest when they destroyed Liverpool that day. But another thing too is they had Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan that day. But I was like, does their attack work better with Alvarez than Holland because Holland is always going to center backs are going to know where he is. He's not really going to leave them. He's always looking to run off the shoulder. Alvarez is going to be a little more interesting with his runs. He's going to drop the play. He's going to run into midfield, things like that. Can Foden kind of make some runs off him. And we did see a little of that. I mean, City were a lot better this game than they were versus Aston Villa, but it still took a while for them to score. Um, I mean, the first opening minute, you kind of see it. So early on, you see Foden playing as a 10 role, and you see Alvarez looking to kind of flick balls, hit to him to get runners in behind. And Foden nearly is played in just 2 minutes into the game, forcing a save. And it's all created by Alvarez just like, dropping for the ball and quickly getting a center back to follow him to go way upfield, leaving the space behind him, and that's where Foden runs into. And then Foden had a couple of efforts on goal in the first half. Rodri forced a save from Kaminsky. Grealish had a nice through ball that Alvarez actually fluffed his lines. It was pretty good play by Grealish. And I thought for the most part, City were moving the ball nice. It wasn't really sticking to a player, but they didn't really have that cutting edge still. And then they actually lead to they find themselves actually down after somewhat playing okay. Right before halftime, Barkley here looks like he's played his way into trouble, but he then does a really good job to have quick feet and does kind of he spins to avoid City players trying to stab at the ball. A really good play by Barkley because I think anyone else probably does lose this, and maybe City have a chance to counter. And then he found Alfie Doughty, and then he runs a field and plays it to Townsend, and then Townsend kind of, looks to his right and plays a really good he floats a 50-50 ball essentially into the box. City didn't necessarily weren't able to do this. City, don't have Holland, um, and just all it takes is just, someone taking a chance. And here, not just taking a chance, Adebayo just dunks on Ruben Diaz. He outjumps him and gives Luton Town the lead, going into halftime. And it was a weird game because it didn't feel like City were playing poor, but they weren't, still at their City best. So it's not just a Holland thing. Obviously, as everyone says, the De Bruyne and the Gundogan stuff are missing. And, Kovacic isn't gonna isn't providing that. Uh, but one weird player that is Rodri. So well, first in the 59th minute, Ruben Diaz strikes the post, and then Bernardo Silva basically scores a curling effort after it rebounds to him. So this is the goal. But it really comes from, Rodri. Rodri, has a really nice dribble that forces it. So he first schools Barkley, and then he takes on a couple other players, and then Locklear basically runs into him. And so Rodri has essentially taken on, like, f 4 players out of the picture, and then, just a rebound kinda just falls to Bernardo Silva, and, he just quickly one-times this into the side of the net. Really good hit, by Bernardo Silva. But it is very funny how, like, their off-schedule guy now since Kevin De Bruyne has been out, has become Rodri. And, everyone can remember Rodri, winning the Champions League for them as well. And, it's just, there's a reason why they don't lose when he plays. It's not just the defensive effort, though I actually feel like his legs are kinda getting tired. You can maybe get a little bit, behind him now, but he's the best DM, in the world, at the minute. You can't, deny that. And just all around his game all around has just tremendously improved as well. And it seems like Pep has given him license to be one of the few players to take people on and be creative, and force the issue. And there you go. And then Rodri wins possession again off Jacob Brown. And after City passes it back to Ederson, City go long. Luton they basically win the ball back, but they get caught losing it, taking a heavy touch, and then, basically letting defender, kicks the ball off Alvarez's head. And then from there, Alvarez has the breakaway, and it's a simple square ball to the back post, to Grealish, making a run, and Grealish basically passes it into the net. It's a very cheap goal for Luton to give away. But one probably City did deserve. Grealish, I didn't feel like had the best game, but it's funny how, he is the one that ends up scoring for them. And then there was maybe a chance for Luton to maybe draw level in the 76th minute. Barkley basically turns back the clock. But he has a really good dribble, so it's not necessarily Luton Town. This is more on just Barkley being good. Uh, so he fools 2 City players. He shows a really good feint and then quick feet to dribble around a couple players, taking a stab at him. So it's Foden and Kovacic. He gets near the box after doing all that hard work, hits the shot wide. And probably just a perfect way to sum up Luton Town right now. Competitive, can do some things in the league that show you they belong, but they just kind of lack the final product too many times. Also, when Carlton Morris has been coming off the bench, I think they're a worse team with him playing. Maybe if you can find a way to play Adebayo and Morris, but I think Adebayo is a better player. Um, I mean, Man City did have 18 shots, 6 on target. Just in general, what they normally have, 3 big chances as well. Not a ton to talk about. I mean, Foden in the camera role, I think he fits better in that kind of role than necessarily being asked to play out wide because he doesn't really like playing that either. But you can only do this because Alvarez or Holland wasn't in the game. Alvarez was kind of the lead striker, kind of almost playing as a false nine, and he has the key assist. But Bernardo and Grealish, goal scorers, but I thought it was an off day a little bit for both. So there wasn't really a ton to look at here. Man City, it's all about just getting the points and just counting down the days until you get Kevin De Bruyne, essentially. And also, it was interesting to see them without Holland. So I guess you can maybe say that. And Pep's comments after the Aston Villa game I thought were interesting. He talked about how he didn't feel like his players have been creative enough, uh, been brave enough, and basically you're worried about transition to playing five center backs on the field. This is your fault, not the players. I think that maybe was the reason why we saw Kovacic play next to Rodri. We didn't see Akanji, we didn't see Stones. So that was interesting. And then with Luton Town, there's a good fight in these last two games. So you can maybe say that, but no points. And they can be physical, they can be dogged versus the big boys, making games hard, making being dangerous on set pieces. Do they have enough in their squad to beat the likes of like a Crystal Palace if they need to? Though I shouldn't say use them as an example because they did beat Crystal Palace. But yeah, Everton, Burnley, Sheffield, Forest, head to head when it counts. Down in the spring. I don't necessarily know if they do. Uh, and really don't see more than 30 points in this team. Now, I've been a hater on Luton the entire time because they don't really play the type of football that I really like. It is very loose to use a word because they don't make a lot of passes. They have gotten better. I mean, 220 here, 74%. It's not that 60%, and the less than 150 that I had seen in some respects. I do think they allowing Russ Barkley and Townsend to come into the side gives them a little quality on the ball. That helps. It has been interesting to see Adebayo maybe play it over Carlton Morris. Um, but it does feel like this is there's still some room, a lot of room for this team to improve on. But we'll have to see. I mean, it's not nothing that they did give both City and Arsenal back to back hard games. You can't you can praise them for that. And then moving on to a different Sunday game, move on to Everton and Chelsea, and Everton go on to win 2-0. And again with Chelsea, it's maybe two steps forward, three steps back because it's so hard to find out where they are. Doku and then Dobbins. Dobbins comes in and basically with his that third touch in the game, wins them the game. There was just a it was a very very weird game again, and just that's a good way to describe Chelsea. Another thing that happened too was they lost Reece James again, and it seems if it's another hamstring injury, which is what they said, he was out for a hamstring before. It's possible he screwed up not having a surgery in the summertime. And by not doing that, do you risk do you do have the if you have surgery now, because apparently that's basically what's needed to fix this, you're not going to be able to be involved, for England Euros. Uh, but that said, if you don't do the surgery now, it's possible this is just going to be a nagging thing. So he's got a bit of a big question to ask, and so does Chelsea, because you're probably not going to be with him for the next I don't know maybe a month again, and he does change them, and they're I was wondering maybe had they had turned a corner again, but then just the Man United loss, and then with this one, it is not ideal. And they went with a different lineup again. And so, Broja got the start over Nicholas Jackson. I don't feel like Jackson was the reason why they lost to Man United, but at least, Broja gave him something different. James Diazzi beat Batshuayi and Cucurella, so no Thiago Silva. And Diazzi and Batshuayi did struggle a little bit with Everton going long. Casado and Enzo were better, though. And so that's at least something you can say, especially Casado. It was interesting to see Gallagher back. Gallagher was actually played deeper, and Enzo was kind of the number 10, which was strange. Cole Palmer and then Mudryk. And so no, Sterling was benched, I guess maybe to save his legs. Mudryk did have a couple chances to get in behind. He got behind Ashley Young a couple of times. But in the second half, after they took Young off, and it was Nathan Patterson, Mudryk did struggle. And Mudryk's probably the best player to look at when why have things not worked out at Chelsea? And they've bought players like Mudryk with a lot of potential for a lot of money, and that hasn't really worked out. And that is just the goals have dried up, and it's like for reasons like that. Chelsea will get into pretty good areas, and then that's just where it all stops. And then with Everton, I think I even had this as like a note when I was like watching the game. You understood what they were trying to do. They were high pressing. They were going long. They were looking when they weren't just going long to just do it. They were trying to aim balls to Calvert Lewin to maybe knock something ahead for Decore or vice versa, looking for Decore to knock for Calvert Lewin. they had a style of play that they were trying to do. I didn't feel like they had that with Chelsea. So that's maybe another problem too. Um, I mean, so let's see. It did feel like, and Borussia, getting a start over Jackson. I don't know if the idea was maybe pump Jackson up, but that didn't really work out. And Borussia didn't necessarily. It wasn't really that impactful either. I think he had 16 touches the entire game. Um, it did feel like Everton were getting just close to getting balls in behind Chelsea's back line. Sanchez was kind of being a sweeper keeper, and then there were a couple decent runs by Borussia, but no one just alongside him. Borussia was getting the ball, and just there would be no one to cross anything in. So that was kind of happening too. There was a chance for Mudryk. He got after finally they got the passes right. Uh, After Everton pressing them, they were able to get an attack going and get Mudryk out wide. Mudryk sends in a dangerous ball, but it's cleared out for a corner kick. But it did feel like, for the most part, that it was the chances were coming far and few between. Badiashile and Diaz, I thought, were struggling with Everton's direct play. And then there was a chance for Harrison cross into the box. Badiashile heads it away, but the rebound nearly finds Harrison, who has a one to volley. And then the 25th minute, Chelsea had to sub Reece James off, and that brought so Colwell on to left back, and then moved Cucurella to right back. Uh, Colwell isn't really a left back by trade. You don't really offer that overlap around, so that probably was factoring in why Mudryk didn't have nearly the best second half either. Is he just doesn't offer the same kind of things. Uh, there was a chance though for Mudryk after Colwell basically helps poach the ball off Harrison. Mudryk again gets into a decent area, but his delivery is just all wrong. He overshoots everyone, and Broje is there if the ball is right. So that was a big chance. And then there was a Everton chance with Dwight McNeil being offsides, and maybe the one weakness that they showed up in the game was Dwight McNeil was maybe refusing to use his right foot for some reason. It's just a long ball over the top confuses Diazy, and McNeil looks to be in behind, but he won't take the shot because of his right foot. And then there was a chance for Broja, Cole Palmer with another really great through ball. This time to Broja. Cole Palmer had a weird game. He did create two chances. But again, he's not really a white wing player himself. He likes cutting in, so you don't really have that kind of width. You would have gotten that with Reece James, but again, that is where that's where the injury hurts you. But Broja, he hesitates on shooting, and there's no one near him to help. And then I did feel like Palmer should be maybe Chelsea's 10, not right wing, but yeah, that can maybe be Sterling, but where do you play Conor Gallagher or where do you play Enzo? So you just get into these kind of situations. Where are you going to play in Cuckoo when he gets back? Um, so I did feel like my halftime thought was again Everton looked like a team that knows what they want to do. Everyone kind of knows their role, and Chelsea feel like they do that until they get to the final third, and then no one really has an idea of what they're supposed to do. And when Everton send a ball in, it's in a crowded area when Decoy and Calvert-Lewin are there, and it did feel like Chelsea just had Brocha in the box. And sometimes Chelsea, one place that Chelsea were enjoying themselves was with Mudryk versus Ashley Young, but all that stopped after the change. And then Everton made another change. Idris Gueye off for Onana came back on. Gueye was on a yellow. And the second half kind of started the same as the first. A McNeil cross, and Garner is just kind of waiting for Decore and Calvert-Lewin to get upfield and sends a long ball up their way. And Chelsea can't deal with the bounce. And again, McNeil runs onto the loose ball and whips in a really dangerous ball into the box. And then there was another chance too where the McNeil shot. And again, it's just a long boot by Pickford, and he's able to pick out Everton all the way upfield. Calvert-Lewin chases the loose ball, and then passes it to Harrison. And after Jack Harrison does well to pick out McNeil top of the box, he lets a strike fly and forces a pretty good save actually by Robert Sanchez. But he also hurts himself, and it becomes a little bit consequential because after that save, there's a corner kick, and Gardner rips in a pretty good dangerous ball on the corner kick. Sanchez is brave and punches the ball, but after that, he basically tries to get back into position and shifts his knee over, and it looks like maybe one gives out on him. And apparently, he maybe hurt himself a little bit versus Man United, and this kind of re-aggravated it. And he didn't come off here, but he did come off later on. And then we get to the goal, and it's Corey that scores it, and Sanchez really doesn't last a ton after this because basically Cavallini flies into his knee as well, so this didn't help. But it comes at Chelsea's like best attacking move of the game. But they get to the final, they get into Everton's penalty area, and the final ball, the final pass isn't right, and Everton has a poor pass, like sideways pass. It goes to no one, and Chelsea out of position at that point, and to stop the counter. And Cucurella is too high of field, and Gallagher is just can't stop McNeil when he runs past him. And from there, McNeil does what Chelsea couldn't do. He finds the final ball to play in Calvert-Lewin, and he's basically, tricked Batashili, running behind him. And then from there, Calvert-Lewin is brave. He goes in for a challenge and tries to poke the ball past Sanchez, and they both collide into each other. And then Decore is able to put away the rebound into the empty net, where Sanchez basically dives the wrong way. Clearly, I think he's affected by his knee at this point. But the attempts through 55 minutes was 6 versus 7. Chelsea had 70% of the ball. So again, it's probably the best way to describe Chelsea is that stat. Lots of the ball, lots of possession, but very toothless with it. Everton, not a lot with the ball, but their direct play, they're able to at least still create some danger moments. Um, and then let's see. Robert Sanchez can't continue and has to come off, and on comes the MLS keeper, Petrovic, making his EPL debut, and Everton quickly score after that. It's not really his fault, but it's more of a case of celebrating, I guess, what happens with Dobbin, because Dobbin basically came on for Jack Harrison in like the 88th minute, and in the 90th he scores and gets his first goal, and it comes first. It's a free kick. And Pickford finds a teammate with a long pass, and Chelsea just can't clear it properly and give away a free corner kick. And then Garner whips in a really good ball. The keeper parries it away, but the rebound basically falls to Dobbins, who has a great strike. There's a reason why he celebrates this. It's not just his first goal. This is a great goal. With his left foot to power in, and it's easy to overhit this. It's bouncing. It's an awkward angle, and he's able to get his knee over it, and thumps this in. And then he also has an awesome knee slide, which I thought was cool. Um, but again, it was just one side had an idea, had a game plan, and the other team just felt like they were caught in between two minds, and that probably does tell the story a little bit of Chelsea. Chelsea had 72% of the ball and only point 0.5 xG. That also describes 0.95. That also describes Chelsea. 9 shots and 5 for Everton, 18 and 4. 260 passes into the final third for Chelsea out of the 610 passes. So a lot of the ball, but a lot of it was behind in their own backyard where Everton didn't really care. Um, so, I mean, with Everton, Dwight McNeil and Decore feel like they're the heart of the team now. It's not really Calvert Lewin anymore. Now Calvert Lewin helps, but it just feels they've taken on the real leadership role. That said, Calvert Lewin has helped, and he hasn't necessarily led to the goals yet. He did help in this one. Um, but it does feel and Beto's starting to feature a little bit more again since he's been back. Beto did get his first goal, I think, versus Newcastle, and he did draw the foul here before the he did draw the free kick that led to the corner kick. So Beto helped a little bit here. Beto has pretty good runs into channels. Um, but and Calvert Lewin, I thought looked pretty good in this game too. He did a lot of running without the ball, a lot of pressing. The kind of ground that him and Decore cover is quite impressive. And then Pickford, I thought was he's gotten better with his distribution. Pickford was actually picking people out like from quite a distance, and that was a way to kind of just bypass Chelsea's midfield. And I thought Dyche made some pretty good changes. Bringing Onana on, bringing Patterson on when he did, and Dobbin scored. So that change worked out as well. And again, they don't have a lot with the ball, but they run their socks off without it. And I would probably guess Decore covered more distance than any Chelsea player, and that just kind of says where it is. And they're about to maybe move stadiums, and Goodison Park is a bit of a weapon. And who needs the 10 points deductions? Because without them, they maybe the 4 points from a Europe spot. Dyche has them rolling right now. Good for him. And because Everton, again, that could have gone two ways. There could have been a lot of because they started a couple of I guess maybe that game versus Man United after their first official game with the points deductions. They started in a relegation spot, and they've just since going all the way up with a couple of I think 3 wins on the bounce. And then with Chelsea, Palmer had some good moments. You can say that the Reece James injury changed everything that they were trying to do. I think with Cole Palmer as well, because you saw how that worked versus Man City, and I think they were trying to do something similar there. Brozier only had 7 passes and 16 touches, so him playing over Jackson didn't necessarily do much. And then Jackson did have a chance after he came on for Brozier, and he whiffed at it. So it's just his confidence in front of the goal isn't great. But I thought Brozier was isolated though. So many times he was making good runs. He would look up, there'd be no one else in the box. No, he's the striker. So I thought that was poor. Sanchez having to be replaced isn't ideal. And then Chelsea maybe struggled a little bit without Gallagher, but also Gallagher, I think actually had the most passes in this game, and he was played in a deeper position. I would figure Gallagher works better, further upfield as kind of an attacking player. Enzo better from a deeper position, but I guess they're worried about Casado's recovery ability. I don't know. I mean, Casado did have a good game though. 95% pass accuracy and won his duels. No one else did. Enzo did have a couple moments, but playing him further upfield was weird to me. I feel like he helps you for build up, not necessarily in the final third. Um, so that was different. I mean, it's very weird. I mean, they didn't play bad, but they've spent £1 billion, and Decore and McNeil were better attackers than Palmer and Mudrick, and I did feel like they played better than what they showed versus Man United, so there's something like that, but, there's just no one there to finish. Mudryk getting a few shot starts over Sterling, I don't really think has worked, and, Broja was poor too, and, maybe the only team, so that is Chelsea at the minute. You just, you don't really know what to expect with them. They are about to get Nkunku back, they are about to get Lavia back, I think they're back training. The only issue was, after getting through that rough, November stretch, to not drop many points, to at least, have that momentum for when they returned, and they've dropped all of that. So all that good work has kind of gone to the wayside. They're mid-table side again, and, maybe, we'll see what they look like with Nkuku and Lavia into the side instead. I don't know what they're gonna do with, Reece James, though. That is gonna be a big miss. Was interesting to see them without Thiago Silva. I've said that maybe they should probably, think about moving on from him, but Diassi maybe not is the answer either. So I don't know. Still a mix of things to do, for Chelsea. And then, from one team in London, we'll go to a different one. And not, well, actually, but both these teams are in London, but maybe the only team that is not enjoying the football more than Everton fans right now are Fulham fans. And Fulham decided to have a five burger on West Ham. And 2 games in a row where Fulham has scored 5 goals. First from Jimenez, and then William, and then Tosin, which killed the game off. And then Haley Wilson probably had goal of Sunday. And then Vinicius got kind of a tap in at the very end. And it was, a London derby, and both teams were off big victories in the midweek. West Ham over that Spurs game. So you wondered, were they going to have some momentum going into this? But they were missing Edson Alvarez, and I think that showed up. They didn't have any kind of way to win the ball back. Ward-Prowse and Souček were not the same kind of animal. They were poor on the ball. Fulham were not good at being able to build it, build possession and keep it. And Fulham were good at turning them over. Fulham were just good. It's not just that they scored 5 goals. They had close to 700 passes completed. Fulham have all of a sudden turned things around entirely. And you look, all of a sudden, their roster has a bunch of teams, a bunch of players that can be reliable on the ball. Castanha's been a good right back to bring in. It gives you a little balance with Robinson, Tom Carney and Paulinho. Yeah, because both basically averaged 90% pass accuracy in this game. Tom Carney coming in with Paulinho. Tom Carney has completely changed them as well. He's a different he has a different eye for a pass. He's a different way to move the ball. And in a way, it's not just Paulinho just playing midfield by himself. Um, and then Iwobi coming in and just playing a little bit more of an advanced role has helped them out as well. And then in this game, you saw Tosin and Bassi. So I don't even know what that does for Tim Ream, but Bassi was quite good. He looks more comfortable playing on his preferred position, where that's where Tim Ream likes to play. And Tosin was probably their better midfield, or the best center back before the season started without the injury. And so Tosin back, you imagine he's going to be have an immediate starting spot. So because they started the season with like Diop, and that wasn't really working out. So it's taken a while for Marcus Silva to get his preferred team in, and all of a sudden, I think you're really seeing Jimenez. Jimenez come in, and again, it could be another instance of a manager coming in and just kind of having some faith in you, and that's changed his form around. But he's also got creators around him now that he hasn't really had. And then in this game, William went off, and they brought in Harry Wilson, and Harry Wilson has had a pretty good going stretch for them as well. So they have a little bench depth maybe. Yeah, the only issue is were they what because they lost the Mitrovic, what were they going to get out of Jimenez? Because you figured maybe it's not the same player. They've been able to get a lot over the last few games. I think 4 goals in 5 games. Um, we'll get to the first chance. There was a James Ward-Prowse free kick, and the only reason I touch on this is a quite a good free kick. 34 for 35 yards out, and he ropes it. But Leno was on his feet, and he's able to save it. And then kind of the first chance goes to William, and it's first kind of a Fulham move. of the game. It starts with Polina having the ball and seeing Jimenez kind of finding a gap in between Ward-Prowse and Suchek. Jimenez collects the ball well and then turns, finds a teammate. And then there's a little triangle passing sequence between Ante Robinson, Carney, and Willian. And then Willian finds Jimenez making a run ahead. And Jimenez just floats a ball over everyone to Willian making a run. And the shot doesn't trouble Fabianski, but you can just see in this little instance of play that, Fulham are here to play some football. Um, and then in the 20th minute, they get the first goal. And a couple of chances for the ref to maybe stop the play for a foul, but he lets the play carry on. Paulinho goes to ground, and really hard to challenge Ward Prowse, and he wins the ball back. And then after it looks like maybe the attack got stalled, Fulham pass it around to the other side, to each other, before Paulinho decides to just float something into the box. Because why not? And he sends in a perfect ball that it picks out a Jimenez just heading it home. And again, it's a really nice story for Jimenez to have a little redemption here because everyone remembers what happened to him, 3 years ago with that, fracturing his skull versus Arsenal. Um, it makes sense that it would take some time to recover from that. People didn't know if he'd be able to play again. It makes sense for him to just be gun shy, for lack of a better word. And all it takes is just some kind of a little run of form to just pick you back up to get you some muscle memory. And he did score some. He took 2 goals um, in the game before this for first Bournemouth. And I don't know. It's just all it takes is just to have be in a better mood to put because this he puts his head into some danger here as well, and it's a nice header. And before he had that injury, he was up there. He was scoring. I don't know, 15, 18 goals, league goals for Wolves. And so this changes a lot if they can find that Raul Jimenez from his Wolf days. And he has started to really go on a goal scoring streak. Um, but another thing, too, is West Ham at this point have no way to really keep the ball, and they don't really have a focal point to go long. They're not playing with Antonio. Jared Bowen is kind of the guy forward. It worked a little bit versus uh, Tottenham, but it's when you're already down a goal and you can't really hold on to the ball, it's not the same. Also, they went with Fornals and Kudus. It was they just struggled to really have any kind of imprint on the game, and Fulham just smothered them, and they quickly get the second here with William. And again, it just kind of shows up here where Tosin jumps in front of the ball to where it jumps in front of a pass to Kudus, and quickly win the ball back. So West Ham are trying to find a way to advance the ball forward, and here Tosin is able to quickly be aggressive and to win the ball back. And then from there, after William cuts inside, he plays a square ball to Iwobi, top of the box unmarked, and it's a good shot, but it forces a save, and the ball stays in bounds. And then Pereira is first to run onto the loose ball and square something back into the box. And then Iwobi just allows it to go through his legs, or maybe he's trying to whiff it. Either way, it ends up finding William, and then William just kind of passes it in. West Ham have a lot of bodies back, but everyone's just kind of watching the ball, and no one's really anticipating anything. And then there was a chance for Bowen. A decent moment, maybe claw back in the game. Suchek floats something in the box, and Bowen connects, but Leno's there to make a save. And then there was a big chance for Iwobi with a deflection. And I just want to touch on this because of the passing sequence here is really good. And this move deserved a goal. I mean, West Ham were chasing shadows. Fulham are just passing it around them for fun. And when you can do that, when you can keep the ball in motion, you can be a lot more adventurous in your possessions, and players have more freedom to move in other areas of the field, losing their marker because defenders are focused on where the ball is, not necessarily where your man mark is, and it's just really good by Iwobi and Castagna and Tom Carney here. Robinson eventually sends the ball in, and it's first defended, but the ball is still still finds Iwobi to the back post completely unmarked, and then his shot's deflected by Cresswell, being in the way. Deserved a goal, but it doesn't really matter because they basically score on the corner kick with Tosin, and it's really good. He just beats Kurt Zuma in the air. I think it even deflects off maybe a guard, but it is his goal, and 3-0 really does kill the game off. And the only reason to really talk about what happened outside of for the other goals is Harry Wilson has a really good goal. So Fulham are pressing to win the ball back. I think it's West Ham throw in. Castagna then is able to pick out Jimenez on the sideline where he finds it will be in the middle. Really good link up play here by Jimenez, and then it will be quickly one times it to Tom Carney, who recognizes the open space and has to carries the ball upfield, and then he scans his options upfield, and thanks to a little Iwobi run, he sees Harry Wilson He plays a really good long ball to the feet of Harry Wilson, and then Wilson then squares up and tells Fabianski to pick the ball out of his own net outside the box with a wonder goal. This is a really good goal. And then maybe a chance for West Ham to get something with Benrahma. They forced a couple saves. They forced Lennon to make a couple saves. Through ball by Bowen, and it feels like Bowen operates better just as a wide creator than necessarily as the lone front man. So Bowen, nice little through ball, and Benrahma, got onto the ball and into the box and at least forced a save. And then Vinicius had a tap in. I guess I'll talk about this because of what Harry Wilson does. So Fulham again are just finding things really easy. West Ham aren't able to get any pressure on the ball. Harrison Reed has since come in and he's looking to get the ball upfield, and he just sees Harry Wilson making a bending run. And it's all about getting the run right and the ball right. And Wilson, gets the ball in behind, and after getting the keeper to commit to come out to him, Wilson basically does the FIFA square ball to Vinicius, and it's an easy tap in. But it's too easy. It's too easy to play this ball over the top to the West Ham's defensive line. But the game had been long over, and just high lines can work if there's pressure on the ball carrier. They don't work if you're just no one's really doing anything. But the game was over, so it is what it is. Um, Fulham have turned into an offensive juggernaut in the last 2 games. They have, let's say 14 shots, 8 on target, 6 big chances for Fulham, uh, 2 big chances for West Ham. Just 680 passes with a 90% accuracy for Fulham as well. And so, what to take away is 3 goals for Wolves, 3 goals for Liverpool, 5 versus Forest, and now 5 in a row versus West Ham. And so, How has this happened? And I do think Iwobi and Tom Carney and Pereira have just completely changed this with Jimenez being the guy to benefit from all that supply and all that creation, because Jimenez his game has just completely turned around, and he's a weapon in the air again. He's a weapon to cross stuff in again. He also he maybe doesn't offer those runs in behind, but Iwobi does. William does. Another thing too is he's quite good at running into midfield and being a guy to link up play, and that's what Mitrovic was doing for them too. That's the reason why maybe Vinicius hasn't really worked out as well, and he recognizes when to drop into pockets and to link play with the midfielders to progress the ball upfield. Um, but he does make some clever runs into the box. When you get into the final third, he does make some good runs there, and the 2 goals that he scored versus Forest show that. All it takes is maybe just him getting his confidence back. So we'll have to see if this can be sustained. But yeah, it will be Tom Carney and Pereira. I want to touch on them. Tom Carney was 104 out of 110 passes completed. 10 passes into the final third, 10 recoveries, and 4 for 6 ground duels. And it just seems to offer a little bit of a better idea of what to do than maybe Harrison Reed. A little more forward thinking, I think. But he's also press resistant. He can keep the ball under pressure, either via carry or pass, and he seems to just understand how to advance the ball forwards. Pereira with 5 chances created. And you have 3 players that are just really good on the ball and good at being adventurous, good at keeping possession, and it means fewer turnovers. It's less moments for Polina to have to stop transition attacks by themselves. Let's see, and it will be with the advanced role. He's a little more creative. It's helping Fulham retain the ball and advance it more. And I think another thing too is he offers good runs ahead too. And when that's on, he pairs well with William. To be honest, and the ability to just kind of play football in the side. 2 fullbacks that balance them, that give them good balance. Robinson has the runs to allow William to maybe play inside a little bit more. Castagna can help them, build possession from the back. He's a good defender as well. Uh, 680 passes is not something to sneeze at. Now, again, how sustainable is this? Is it just kind of a purple patch? We'll have to see. But I was one of those that I was kind of worried a little bit about Fulham, coming into the season, and I was wrong about Bournemouth. Really, I'll double down. I was tremendously wrong about them. I was also judging them on maybe not having Polina back or in the side. In the first couple of weeks, they had those couple of games without him. I remember like Brentford and Everton were getting 20 shots on their back line. They've done all this without Tosin. Tosin's finally back. Um, and just all of this I think has changed since that Wolves game when Tom Carney and Iwobi got a start because Paulinho wasn't able to play in that game. And so many of these games, Fulham have looked really bad without Paulinho. And since that Wolves game, it just everything has kind of changed. And Marco Silva finally saw that what Tom Carney and Iwobi can do in the side, and that seems like everything has kind of changed with that. And I didn't really see Jimenez working out. I've been wrong about that, but all of a sudden you can see that their pieces start to fit a little bit. Um, and it has taken some time for Silva to get this lineup correctly, but yeah, there's creation there. There's goal scorers there, and you have some you've got defenders that can do recovery. Leno is a pretty decent keeper. So all of a sudden, I've gone from Fulham, being in Doom's mode because they don't have, at midweek football. Maybe they can be a sneaky spot to make a run at being a top eight finish. I don't know. I was legitimately thinking that they could be a team that could go down in the summertime, and now I'm doing a completely 180. Now, um, I am going off only 3 games, and I could be very reactionary, but that just kind of feels as long as they don't suffer, like, bunch of injuries, and they're only gonna be playing, once a week, this could look a lot different. So we'll have to see. I don't know if they're gonna be able to keep Paulinho in January or not. There'll probably be people looking at him, but they'll probably ask for a ransom too. So, I don't know. There's so many teams that are just they're gonna take points off each other. And who are the teams that can get easy wins that can be by just scoring a bunch of goals? Who are the teams that can pass around teams and who can avoid injuries? Those hard fought draws are not going to mean anything this year, in my opinion. So those are the teams that's going to be how the table's going to shape up. And Fulham, to me, kind of have even more than Brighton, because Brighton have bunch of those hard fought draws. Fulham to me has seemed they have potential more than any of these other sides to really fly up the table. So I don't necessarily know if that'll happen or not. Could age terrible, but we'll have to see. And then with West Ham, I've been saying I've been doubting Marcus Silva, and now I'm doubling down on I'm praising him. And maybe I'll jinx him. I don't know. And then with West Ham actually going to be maybe a side that's going to go in the opposite direction, because a mix of a good and bad week because you beat that Spurs team, and then I think it's fine if Moyes loses this team or loses this game. He wouldn't have wanted to get hammered at lack of a bad pun. And it's just, you don't want to make this an embarrassing point where maybe doubt creeps in with what you're trying to do with these players. I do think, just in general, no Edson Alvarez, it showed up. He was suspended. So you get him back. It's not like he was injured or anything. Just they didn't have the way to win the ball back. They're worse in possession, struggling without a hold up man. They need to get Antonio back, or they need to play that Umbamba guy, or they need to go out and get a striker in January. I don't know if West Ham are looking to do that. Sufal and Cresswell looked lost. Uh, no Emerson this game. I mean, William and Wilby looked like they could get anything they wanted. Any cross, anytime they wanted to cut inside, go outside. They were unmarked when they made them runs. I thought Paqueta looked leggy this game, so I don't think it's all terrible. I mean, Emerson again, and Emerson, Edson Alvarez, and Antonio probably love this result because you have to look at this and say, "Oh, I'm going to get back in the side quickly." They're probably right. They do have an important Europa game this Thursday that they need to. So we'll have to see how they respond. You imagine a response because usually they get that with Moyes, but we'll have to see. I mean, I don't like the idea that Bowen's having to play every single game, and but it's different to play, as a wide creator to necessarily be asked to actually lead the attack by himself because you're playing in the central area, you're probably doing more running. So hopefully that doesn't get to his legs. But anyways, that is West Ham and how from one Europa team to another. Mentioned Brighton, so I'll talk about what happened with Brighton and Burnley, and I'm kind of creeping up with time. This one ends 1-1 with Odegaard getting the first goal. No Kolyashu, so Odegaard came in, and then Adenga. Adenga came in and got a header to make it 1-1. Brighton were off a good win versus Brentford. Goals from Pascal Gross and 18-year-old Hinselwood. And then Burnley did lose Kolyoshu and did lose versus Wolves, so weren't able to really get the momentum goal that they wanted. But at the same time, getting a point away at Brighton isn't necessarily a bad result. They were outplayed, but you take the points where you get them. Like I mentioned, the aggressive draws or the hard work draws. I don't really know if they're going to matter that much, but a point's a point. Um, with Brighton, you did get Lewis Dunk back, so good to have him back. Um, Was it, another, shuffled lineup. It seems like Brighton have done more shuffles than any other side in England, and that's maybe kind of affected a little bit of their form. So Dahoud and Balba and Lallana was in midfield three, so Billy Gilmore was on the bench. Um, Maybe he's rested for Marseille. I can't really say. It was interesting to see Gross and Milner, and I feel like maybe I'm just hating, but I feel like when Milner has played, Brighton have lost points. So I just feel like he's not necessarily responsible for the goal here. Though Odegaard was actually having a lot of fun versus him. Um, but that is something that just kind of showed up to me in this game. In the second half, they took Milner off. They brought on that Hinselwood guy and moved Pascal Gross to left back. And that changed the game. Gross had a lot of really good delivery, and that basically is what would change the game entirely. Another thing too was Matoma didn't start. Matoma came on in the second half, and Matoma, changed the game. And Brighton probably could have won this game. I don't know necessarily go over all of the chances because I am kind of running low for time. I mean, Brighton did have 29 shots, 11 on target, and four big chances missed or created for Brighton, three missed. Burnley did have a couple chances missed themselves, though. And Trafford made 10 saves. So that kind of shows you where the game was. Brighton really should have, gotten a little bit more out of the game. 705 passes, 91%, but 377 in the Burnley opposition half. It wasn't like what Chelsea did versus Everton. Brighton were much more progressive and they moved the ball quicker. And they probably did deserve to score more than one goal in this game. The delivery from Gross was really good. Bill Gilmore came in. I thought they moved the ball better in the second half with him. Pascal Gross isn't really a left back, but sometimes you just have to, play where you need it. He offered them a lot, and I think he scored a really good goal versus Brentford, playing in that left back role. So, the Brighton have a bunch of injuries out themselves. No Lamptey, no Estupiñán, and they're missing. I guess Veltman wasn't able to go here. They're missing a lot of guys just at the fullback area. They're trying Sully Marsh in some of those cases, and Sully Marsh can't go for a little bit. No Foddy as well. I don't have to go over the whole injury issue, but Brighton are probably missing as many people as say Newcastle, as say Brentford or anyone. People have been focusing on Man United and Chelsea. Brighton have a ton of guys that are missing out as well, and that just really is the theme at the moment. How good are you at being able to rotate some guys in to keep the legs fresh, but also deal with some injuries to key players, and not really suffer a dip in form, and it's not easy. And so it is just kind of a thing that De Zerbi has to kind of deal with. They're still playing some really good football. Don't get me wrong. Um, and then, Matoma and Adingra, were quite good in the second half, so and it's fitting that, Adingra gets the goal for them because he was quite good. He was quite impactful as a creator and a goal threat, and then Hinselwood, has just all of a sudden, come in and been impactful. Gets the goal versus Brentford, and, he was good in this game too. Because one thing that did is that, allowed you to move Gross over to the left back, and, he had 2 or 3 headers in this game that maybe could have, led to goals themselves, forced a pretty good save, in one of them. And, a big game on Thursday, and you get why De Zerbi wanted to maybe rest a few players versus Marseille, but, um, it's very weird how he's even rotating the keeper. Verbruggen will play 1 week, and then Jason Still will play in another. So, one thing I was thinking about is, would Newcastle be interested in maybe Jason Still's services? I mentioned how, Ramsdale, that's probably not gonna happen because Ramsdale isn't gonna wanna join a place where Pope will be there next season. Jason Steele might necessarily, be against that, but I don't I've heard David De Gea's name, mentioned. You've imagined Newcastle's gonna have to do something. But yeah, with this one, a couple of rotation, that happened. I feel like, Bill Gilmore, when he's fit, needs to be in the 11. I get maybe he's maybe being rested for Marseille, but did they, the midfield looks a lot different when he plays. I think that shows up as well. Um, and then with Burnley, they played much better in the first half than in the second half. It's one of those where you had to just kind of take your lumps. They got their early goal and they just weren't able to really add on to it. There was a couple moments. There was a really good chance at the very end where I feel like it was Trésor tried to square something into. It wasn't Charlie Taylor. It was Connor Roberts. It was Nathan Redmond. Nathan Redmond nearly it was kind of a just, a lone transition moment they had in the second half where just Connor Roberts is just an inch away from getting this right. Nathan Redmond had a really good little cameo coming off the bench, but other than that, they were just really just on the back foot the entire second half. So and Trafford having making 10 saves says that, and good for him. Maybe the youngest keeper in the league. Not even 20, 21 years old. He was the keeper for the U21 England side. Maybe he is like, I don't know, 22. So good for him. And Odegaard. Odegaard came in and had a lot of take-ons. Was hungry. Got a good goal. Maybe took a little deflection, but hey, he it's not an easy goal. That's actually I shouldn't say that. It's quite a good goal because he takes on three players, and then when he's going backwards, he then flicks it, and it's a long distance shot, and he roofs it. It's a really good goal, and without that, Burnley don't get anything in the game, and so. Yeah, the Koleosho injury gave an opportunity for Odegaard, and I was looking at the injury list for Burnley. No Law Foster still, so he can maybe feature in sometime. And Josh Collin was a good player for them in the championship last year, and maybe they've been without his services. I don't really know. So it's really the worst, not really the worst week for Burnley. But 'cause you figured, maybe with Wolves too, they had an opportunity, but they just weren't able to really make that count. And then I'll move on to the other another promoted team in Sheffield, and a much better week for Sheffield than I guess you could say, because Sheffield do go on to get a win versus Brentford. Brentford had to go into this without Embremo, and I think that showed they were a little toothless in their attack. And this game was just rain. It was miserable, and maybe the field kind of played a role into how poor it was. But there was a really good moment with James McAtee. James McAtee did have goal of Saturday with a brilliant hit coming in, and my buddy texted me immediately, and he was like, interleague loan should be illegal, and I get why he says that because he is a Man City player, and there probably should be a conversation about that. I kind of agree, to be honest. Now that you think about it, it's one thing to loan people to championship, but in the actual league, that does feel I get the idea of wanting to get players experience and whatnot, but that feel like that does give. An advantage maybe to some of the bigger clubs, and it can't hurt you. But at least in here, I guess it helped Sheffield, and Sheffield avoided that Liverpool scare, or gave Liverpool a scare, and with Chris Wilder back, they did look better. This game was Brentford did not really have a lot of moments. There was like a Weissa chance that forced a save, but for the most part, they were quite toothless, and Sheffield did go into a bit of a different formation. The lineup was different. We've seen Vinny Sousa all of a sudden come back into the lineup. It didn't make sense why Heckenbottom had capped him out. Uh, and Sheffield were just harder to play through. And so, Brentford weren't able to really, they didn't have that 1v1 ability to really get by people. They weren't good enough passing the ball. And that led to a lot of misplayed passes and a lot of chances for Sheffield to counter on, and they did. There was a really good shot by Ursula that forced a save. Another thing that happened was this guy Suleiman came in, and Suleimani came in the second half, and he had a couple really good moments. Maybe he even could have done better. Where both of these came from misplayed passes. So, and to be honest, Sheffield had the better opportunities. A couple square balls. Two big chances for them. Only 9 shots at versus 10 for Brentford, both with 4 on target. But Sheffield did have probably the better opportunities. So, I think the takeaway is you can see all of a sudden a game plan a little bit how they want to play, way more organized, far better closing down. The gaps weren't really there. Cameron Archer was positive. I thought he was pretty good for Liverpool as well. Yeah, McAtee and Hammer just offer a little quality to when the game was kind of needed to. Hammer was able to have that ball that found McAtee, and I think the other thing that was in the back of my mind was it was because I was watching when Liverpool played them just on Wednesday. How did Newcastle score 8 versus this team? Because the gaps weren't really there. Arsenal scored 5. Burnley scored 5. And maybe all it takes is just players having the will to, I guess, run and close down. uh, to be just a little harder to play through because the gaps weren't nearly as there. And it doesn't make sense why just one guy coming in after like 3 days has them being that much better organized. But that has been the case. So I don't necessarily think this is going to work long term. But to already be playing better, it makes sense to get rid of Higginbottom. So there you go. And then with Brentford, I think it is what it is. They're missing. They're missing. You see what they're missing with Malpai. I mean, with Embremo. Very important to what they do. You know, he's the long ball outlet. He's creative. Combines well with others. He's stronger on the ball than you realize. I guess some positives were, Damsgaard was back and apparently looked good in the second half. Yamaluk came on as a bench player in 5 or 6 ground duels. That's decent. But it was a side that lacked 1v1 ability to create a little spark. Weren't able to create many chances for Neil Bonpie, and that kind of showed up as well. And then I'll move on to Wolves and Nottingham. This one ends 1-1 as well. First goal from Tupelo, so you allow Nottingham to get the first goal. And then Cunha, Wolves were able to get one back, and I think they got it in the 31st minute. And then from there, Nottingham Forest were actually the team that really did have the better chances. But Nottingham showed up in like this like deep six, back six like terrorism, deep block. I shouldn't say that. Back, very defense minded, I guess I should say. And park the bus, I guess you could say. Wolves weren't able to get enough passes to play through it. It was interesting to see Sarabia back into the starting 11. That was good. And I have wanted to see that, but in this game, because Wolves had so much of the ball in kind of the Forest kind of final third, when you need to again, it's not pretty when you need to just cross something in. You have a 6'6" striker in Kolasinac. That probably would have been the game to play him instead. And, just maybe a chance that Gary O'Neill would admit that maybe he was a little wrong because he was available and he did show up in the 90th minute, but I thought it was just way too long to bring him on. And again, with Nottingham Forest, they basically showed up in a lineup to not get beat. They did. So it was Nico Williams, Bali, Murillo, Niakate, and then Toffolo. And Toffolo did get the goal, and Nico Williams actually had the assist for the goal. So the wingbacks did work out, but this was very defense minded. This was once they got that first goal, everyone was behind the ball. No strikers were played. Gibbs White and Alenga. Alenga did have a chance to maybe get the game winner. I think he basically hit the post, but the ball came to him quickly. It's not really the easiest shot, but you play without a striker. This is what you get. Um, Matt Turner back in goal. I thought that was interesting. But this was a game for basically Nottingham Forest to not get beat on, because it seemed like Steve Cooper's job was on the line, and they just set up to play really defensive football. And just Wolves didn't do enough to punish it. The Wolves had a lot of the ball, 68%, 555 passes. Forest had 210, 8 shots and 2 on goal. But they probably did have the most big chances in the game. And again, with Nottingham Forest, like, is this enough to keep Steve Cooper having his job? This is the kind of ball that they played last season when they were able to stay alive just by barely. But another thing they had is they had Tawo Awani kind of come to light a little bit down the stretch too. You don't have him now because he's not fit. You're also going to miss him because of African Cup of Nations. He'll probably be finna play for is it Nigeria? He's on someone for Cup of Nations. So you're going to be without him no matter what. Is this enough to keep him? Maybe they'll stick with keeper till Christmas, maybe till January. It does feel like if they don't find a way to find a different way of playing and find some form, I can't really justify it, to be honest, because Forest aren't that many points above the other promoted sides, and the other promoted sides are starting to actually win games. So you understand why maybe he's under some stress. And in this game, you've got Nico Williams with that kind of delivery to send something in. And like I said with Kolasinac, why didn't Chris Wood play? Why didn't you bring Chris Wood on to attack some of that delivery? Just maybe a missed opportunity. I can't really say. But roster wise, this team shouldn't go down. But they're only 5 points now above Luton and 6 points above Burnley now. So I don't know. I did feel like it was a little bit desperate. And then with Wolves, maybe a case of them, maybe not having a deep enough squad to rotate. Maybe the legs seem fresh. They were flat. Sarabia did have a good starting role, or it was good to see him have a starting role, and he helped lead to the goal. But they just weren't able to necessarily, do enough. But they still get 4 points in the two games, so that's not going to kill them. And then that's it. That's our. I tried to go through it a little fast. That is our show for the week 14 and 15 review show, and we're back next week to talk about it. Talk about what happened. I guess week 16. So there we go. So that's it. That's it. And don't forget. I guess we are also on Spotify. I always kind of forget to mention that midweek review show as well, or reserve squad a midweek. And so that said, sorry, I'm kind of flummoxed a little bit because something is on the screen that probably, uh, you know. Anyways, so that said, thank you for listening, and use their squatting and stop recording.